Good evening, and welcome to the Trumbull Board of Education regular meeting, Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021, 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like people to remain standing in silence for Joseph Cavanolo, who was a former TEA president who recently passed away. Thank you. Mrs. Norcell.
There were multiple emails in support of keeping policy 9140. There were emails in support of rescinding policy 9140. Megan Zaniski, Sarah Levine, and Jennifer Colello are in favor of the 3.9% Board of Ed budget and want the Board of Finance to fully fund the Board of Ed's budget. Marjorie Brown explained her reasons why she is very pleased with the Trumbull school system and wants the money to be returned so we have a full budget. Andrew and Melinda McCool asked that we keep the hybrid learning at the middle schools for the rest of this school year. Jen Keeley had questions and concerns about the audit, policy 9140, and other further cuts that might be put on the Board of Ed's budget by the Board of Finance. That was all our communications for this meeting.
Thank you, Jackie. Next is public comment. I just wanted to remind everyone that public comment is 2 minutes, and you will hear a little ding. If you hear it, you can wrap up what you want to say. And we all thank you for that. Our first speaker is Frank Squiccimarro.
Hello, I must get in early every week. Thank you for your time. This is the wrong time for a meeting and poor planning. If anyone not speaking, please go over to the Board of Finance and lobby for the school budget, because everyone in this discussion can use the money to help our kids. But I'm here to talk about a different meeting. What I have to discuss. The policy committee meeting, which is a loose description of committee, unfortunately. I commend the parent and community stakeholders for their composure. I apologize, I haven't watched this meeting previously. A committee is a group of people appointed for a specific function, in this case, making policies to present to the board. Not the board sending edicts, and when asked their opinion, the stakeholders on it, to get berated or applauded when it matches their position. I don't know when it changed, but in the past, committee members were able to vote. They're able to make motions. They're able to second those motions from old minutes I've read. I haven't found the time when they took those votes away. The entire committee used to create the vote on the policies presented, as I said. Now, all the stakeholders were valued and afforded an actionable opinion. They were able to make their opinion count. If their opinion doesn't count, why would they speak up if they're just going to get yelled at? This made Trumbull a unique and exceptional school district, that the stakeholders had the ability to shape policy. People moved to our town for the exceptional school system. And they're not here for a standard form letter policy from the Board of Education's lobby, CABE. I hope that you will think and value those members on the committee and reinstate their voting privileges, because they are put on that committee for their expertise, not just because they're a parent, but because they know education and they know and what their children need. Now, wrapping up, I thank you for your time, and hopefully this changes. Have a good night. And hopefully everyone else goes to the Board of Finance and asks for money, because we all need it and we all want more teachers, and things for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ruth Cantilla. Katie,
Who was the next speaker?
Ruth Cantilla.
Thank you. I couldn't hear over a ringing. My apologies. Good evening. My name is Ruth Fontilla. I'm a vice president of Trumbull PTA Council, or Trumbull PTAC. We urge you to reconsider the recommendation of the policy committee to rescind policy 9140. This policy should remain a part of the Board of Education because hearing teachers' voices and perspectives on the state of public education here in Trumbull remains critical for all of us. The reports given by the teacher representative of the Board of Education constitute one of the few opportunities parents and the general public have to hear directly from teachers. Rescinding this policy would remove their voice from the public domain. A more measured and appropriate response might be to revise the policy, as was done with the policy 6172.6, which happened during that same March 11th meeting of the policy committee. The concern from members of the Board of Ed about being the only town in Connecticut to have a teacher representatives are unjustified. The original feeling and overall purpose of the policy 9140 was collaborative and inclusive, to hear everyone's voices at the table, something of which Trumbull should be proud. For in the words of Margaret Thatcher, don't follow the crowd, let the crowd follow you. We urge you to consider not rescinding this policy, but consider revising it. This approach would continue to allow teachers and those in the greater Trumbull community to know their opinions matter at all levels of public school education. If the concern that a Board of Ed meeting is not the appropriate place to air grievances and complaints, then revise the policy clearly to reflect that. And finally, as a taxpayer, I was deeply saddened by the way the Board of Ed members interrupted and spoke over others on the committee during the March 11th meeting. The view of the members of the Board of Ed were well established. What wasn't clear were the opinions of the other members of the committee, and their voices were unfortunately stifled during that meeting. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mary Elena Coronas.
Good evening, Marilena Coronas, President of the Trumbull PTA Council. I'm reading a statement this evening on behalf of all members of the council. The Trumbull PTA Council urges the Board of Education to reconsider the recommendation of the Policy Committee to rescind Policy 9140. The council believes that the board rescinding this type of policy without considering revision sets dangerous precedent. The teacher representative report, along with the student representative report and public comment, strengthen and preserve the inclusive representative nature of a public Board of Ed meeting. The council would like to see all of these three elements maintained. Thank you for your time and your consideration and your service.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lynn Brown.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I thought I had 3 minutes, not 2, so I might be a little fast speaking here. I hope you understand. I'm speaking tonight as both a Trumbull taxpayer and a teacher at Hillcrest Middle School, and I want to urge the board to reconsider voting to cancel the voice of the TEA in their meetings, which has been granted through policy 9140 that allows for the teacher representative. I understand that some members want to justify rescinding this policy by saying that we have new administrators who are very open to allowing teachers to communicate with them directly via town halls and other focus groups that are being established. While I applaud these efforts and welcome these measures from Dr. Semmel and Dr. Iwaniki, I caution the board not to be so short-sighted. In my experience in education over the past 14 years in 2 school districts, I have had 6 different superintendents. And so as a student of history, I would say that the trend is that policies of current administration are only here for as long as they are. And while I hope that our new administrators remain with us for the long haul, experience has shown me that each new administration comes with their own plans to make their own mark on a district. And that often includes getting rid of the practices of previous administrations. Aside from that, I would urge members of the board as well as the public to consider the timing of this decision and the message that's being sent. In the midst of such an unprecedented and stressful year, the message coming down is that we can only share the highlights instead of acknowledging any mistakes made and working collaboratively to find solutions and ways to better ourselves in our district. I teach my students about the importance of using their voice. I tell them that it is one of the most powerful tools that we have in our democracy. I also teach them about the importance of collaboration and how skills of collaboration are highly valued in our economy and society. So wouldn't it be better to model such collaboration to set the example for other districts who are not striving for the same kind of partnership and transparency? If proper channels of communication and grievances need to be reinforced or reestablished, then that can be accomplished by both sides communicating and, more importantly, listening to one another, rather than the board sending the message that it does not trust teachers to understand proper protocols. I feel that this move to cancel a policy that encourages open and transparent communication between all stakeholders in our district is damaging to morale and sows the seeds of distrust unnecessarily between board members who play a vital role in our education system and the teachers who are on the front lines of it. I want to thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Pam Flynn. Pam, we can't hear you.
You're muted, Pam.
All right, technology.
There you go.
Pam Flynn, 54 Peaceful Valley Road. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I am a Trumbull teacher of 20 years and a parent of 3 children who have attended Trumbull Public Schools. My oldest daughter is a freshman at Providence College, and my twins are sophomores at Trumbull High. I am here today to give you a glimpse into what the budget cuts have done to our school and community. Our staff was demolished by the cuts this past year. We now have only 2 special education teachers to serve our entire building. One teacher is grades K to 2, and the other is 3 to 5. The K to 2 teacher has 19 students on her caseload. This may seem a manageable number on paper, but when she added up all of these 19 students' service hours, hours for decoding, math support, writing support, etc., it totaled 71.25 hours per week. Yep, 71.25. How is that possible for one person to meet these hours? It isn't. This doesn't even include the hours needed for testing newly identified students or students who have annual reviews. Our special ed teachers are having to combine grade levels, skip lunches, and preps just to meet these students' needs. It just saddens me so, as my own daughter was one of the lucky children who was identified in an elementary school. Thanks to the support from her special education teachers through the years, she is now a successful high school sophomore. How can these students get the same successes with such limited staff? They can't. How about our math and reading specialists? Did you know that they were cut too? We now share a math specialist with Frenchtown. She is amazing, but only at our building for 2 days a week. Our reading specialist is also fantastic, but is only 1 person instead of 2. She services the entire building. This means she is only able to help the neediest of children. Anyone who might have been on the cusp and benefited from small group instruction, get them up to grade level, is out of luck. No time, no help for them. How about our social worker? I know you've all read of how the effects of COVID are going to be long lasting on our youth's mental health. Did you know that we share our social worker with another school? She is not at Tashua every day. So this means any child that might be anxious or have concerns on a Friday or a Monday will have no one to talk to. They're again out of luck. And now on top of all of these devastating cuts, we are being told our teacher voice on the Board of Education is in jeopardy of being cut as well. Enough is enough. We need more staff and support. Please, I ask you to put back what you've taken from the students of Trumbull. Restore our school system to the one I moved here for, so the future generations can have the same quality of education that my own children have received. Thank you for listening and addressing my concerns.
Thank you.
Just interrupt, Pam, I might just suggest that you go to the Board of Finance meeting, because this Board of Education supported a 3.81% increase. And tonight, the Board of Finance is meeting to take public comment such as yours. So
Is it
you
too
may,
late to sign up for that, though?
I don't think so. And I sent out a Zoom link tonight just so folks would have it.
All right, I'll hop on over there then. Thank you.
Follow Dr. Fell's link. He sent you the link, and all you have to do is raise your hand and they'll take you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. There's a good reason. Our next speaker is John Cogden.
Good evening. My name is John Congdon, and I live at 15 North Linwood Drive. In addition to being a resident of Trumbull, I have been teaching in town for over 23 years. My wife has been teaching in Trumbull for 18 years, and we also have 3 children, all of whom attend Trumbull Public Schools. I am here tonight to express my concern with this Board of Education's attempt to rescind Policy 9140. The policy is designed to ensure the collaboration process between teachers and the Board of Education remain intact, regardless of district leadership. It is my understanding that the board is considering the grievance process outlined in the CBA as the primary rationale for rescinding this policy. I disagree with this rationale, as I also sit on the TEA executive board and am familiar with the grievance process. Having watched board meetings virtually this past year, I have heard controversial topics brought up by the teacher representative, but have never witnessed anything that would be considered a grievance being aired. While the presentations teachers provide the board during Board of Education meetings do showcase the hard work all teachers of Trumbull do on a daily basis, they do not replace the unfiltered voice provided by the teacher representative position. Taxpayers like myself like to hear what the teacher representatives have to say regarding the operations of Trumbull Public Schools. When you have an issue with a policy as important as 9140, eliminating it entirely is not the answer. Why remove a voice that so many residents rely on to understand what is truly happening in our schools? I am urging you not to rescind Policy 9140, but instead send it back to committee for revision. There needs to be a method in place to ensure collaboration exists long after district leadership changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lisa Cerulli.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Cerulli, 849 Plattsville Road. I am a Trumbull resident, a Trumbull parent, proud parent of 2 recent Trumbull High graduates, and a Trumbull teacher at Madison Middle School for the past 17 years. I am also speaking to ask you to please reinstate or send back to committee for revision the teacher rep position, Policy 9140, at this time. Communication at all levels is so important, and I have always felt myself so blessed as both a parent and a teacher to always feel that those lines of communication are open and available to myself and to my children as they went through the Trumbull Public Schools. It was over the years great to hear about all of the amazing things our kids have been doing and to actually contribute some of that information myself to our teacher rep member at the Board of Education. In these most challenging of times, it is more important than ever to keep those lines of communication open and available to all so that we can address the challenges together, work through them, come up with solutions so that we can support our kids and our colleagues during this most difficult time. Families need the support right now, and working together and keeping those lines of communication open is crucial to that support. Again, I ask you to please not rescind the policy and or to at least send it back to the committee for revision so that we can come up with a policy that would be acceptable to all. Thank you again for your time and for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Kelly Sismadia.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight. I really appreciate that. Recently, I watched the policy committee meeting from March 11th and was disappointed to hear that the committee recommended to rescind policy 9140, likely resulting in the removal of the teacher rep that's been a member of board meetings for as long as I can remember, as a teacher of 22 years and also a resident of 17 years in Trumbull. I'm requesting that you consider sending this back to the policy committee for revision. Although it's true that teachers are called upon to present the excellent resources they use in their classrooms, it's also true that the taxpayers of Trumbull want to hear teachers' voices in regard to the issues and challenges, as well as those accomplishments. The last time the teacher rep was able to present a report was at the December board meeting. After that, the rep was removed from the agenda of each future meeting, and then the recommendation to revisit policy 9140 was made. It seems to many that maybe it should have been the other way around. While CAVE has been cited as one reason to support this change in board policy, thus far, a teacher rep has not mentioned nor jeopardized a possible grievable issue in this public forum. We know that we teach our children that image matters, words matter, actions matter. And what the taxpayers of Trumbull have associated together is the timing of the removal of the teacher rep and the further questioning by that teacher rep of complicated issues such as the audit or the request for a further forensic audit. Now, there's an impressive, energetic, problem-solving new administration at the helm, and for that, we're so encouraged and hopeful. However, much has happened in the eyes of the taxpayers over the last few years. Some of this has eroded a degree of trust, which isn't very surprising. I'm asking the board to continue to work to build that trust and transparency to get back to a place we all know that Trumbull can be for our students, our families, our teachers, all of us here tonight. One of the steps in that process should not be removing such a vital voice. Not so long ago, public comments were not limited to only 15 speakers granted 2 minutes apiece. Voices matter, and while ideas such as town halls and focus groups and presentations by teachers and thought exchanges are incredible, positive, truly encouraging avenues to include the voices of so many stakeholders, the taxpayers wonder why this has to replace the teacher rep at board meetings rather than enhance it. Administrators, boards, and teachers come and go, but removing policy 9140 can cause lasting damage. In closing, I thank you for your time and request that you send this back to committee for revision. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lisa Zielinski.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to first off thank you for your service and giving me the time to speak this evening. My name is Lisa Zielinski. I'm a Trumbull resident, proud Trumbull teacher, and mom to 4 TPS children, 2 who graduated, 1 senior, and 1 entering freshman. I'm speaking this evening asking you to fully support Dr. Semmel's proposed educational budget as presented. I am an advocate for change, when that change is an improvement to the present situation. During these uncertain times, it is especially vital that we work together to reflect on our successes and challenges as educators and decision makers, to continually strive for improvements. As teachers, we routinely reflect on our practice, and we ask this of our students daily. I believe the presence and participation of both a teacher and a student representative on our Board of Ed are the epitome of our country's great democratic process. The reps are uniquely positioned to give relevant, real-time feedback and information about the current state of our school system. I feel that the continuation of this policy will ensure that our great Trumbull Public School system remains accountable to all stakeholders, parents, teachers, administrators, students, and residents. Elimination of this position would adversely affect the critical communication link between our faculty and the Board of Education. The teacher rep will continue to affirm Trumbull's commitment to doing what is best for students. It's what I ask myself every day, every lesson I teach. What's best for students and our families, especially now during these trying times. When it comes to the monthly board discussions, the perspective that a teacher and a student brings to the table is critical and incomparable. Please save these inclusive seats at the table. Again, thank you all for that you do for our children of Trumbull.
Thank you. Our next speaker is April Lang.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Hi, good evening, Trumbull community members, Board of Ed, Dr. Semmel, Dr. Iwaniki, and anyone else who's present tonight. My name is April Lang, and I live here in Trumbull. I'm a mom of 2 children who attend Middlebrook Elementary School. I'm here tonight to state that I do not support the revocation of Board Policy 9140, the teacher representative. As stated in the recording of the meeting, policy is meant to last for years and not be revisited every time there is new administration at Long Hill. Trumbull Public Schools has been lucky with the new administrative team at Long Hill, who have been holding town hall meetings and other small personal meetings to give and gather the pulse of the staff throughout the district. This has not always been the case in the past and can change when the Long Hill administration team changes. As a parent, we have the right to know what is going on in the buildings from a teacher's perspective and one that represents all levels throughout the district. That is not to say that principals are not addressing the issues and bringing them up the chain of communication. Each building across the district has its own personality and unique student base, which creates different needs for them to address. If the board is truly unhappy with the policy, then send it back to the committee and let's revise it versus removing it and removing the teacher's voice. In addition, I would like to state that I'm fully supportive of Dr. Semmel's Board of Ed budget, and I have sent that message along to the Board of Finance already. So thank you for your consideration tonight.
Thank you very much. And we thank all the speakers this evening. And those of you that were speaking about the budget, please go to that Board of Finance meeting if you can. Thank you. Okay, next is the superintendent's report, Dr. Semmel.
All right, thank you, and good evening, everybody. I do have a few items on this report, so I'll go through it relatively quickly, but there's a few items. I wanted to mention our THS yearbook is a pacemaker finalist. I received a word from those folks. So on March 11th, the National Scholastic Press Association named the 2020 edition of the Trumbull High School yearbook Trillium a pacemaker finalist. They let me know that this award winners are the best of the best yearbooks across the country. And the 2020 edition, We Make History, This Is How, was one of only 51 high school looks, as well as the only yearbook in all of New England that was selected as a finalist. So we're excited to hear that. And we understand that pacemaker winners will be announced at the NSPA Spring Journalism Convention on April 10th. So we wish them really good luck. And the advisor had also told me that all the kids had to work on this, virtually, because all this was done during that, during the pandemic. So good for them and their hard work, and their success already, but their potential future success. The District Equity Leadership Team, also lovingly known as the DELT. As part of our district goal around developing a Trumbull Public Schools Social Justice Coalition, we had our first meeting of the DELT. The meeting was facilitated by CERC, which is the State Education Resource Center. And I also sent an email home today, this afternoon, with additional information to all parents and staff about this particular group getting off the ground. We will have a web page on our website that'll be focused on this information. We don't have it up and running yet, but we will end up having a web page so we can put more of our information there so people can go and find it as we go. I do also want to mention, and one of the public speakers mentioned it, we did launch something called a thought exchange around strategic planning for our district. So I do want all parents, all staff members, anybody who receives that link to go on and take some time to provide their input. Not only provide your input, but there's a way to rate how you feel about other people's input. And it's not like Facebook ratings, it's I support this kind of comment, I don't support this kind of comment. And so this thought exchange process gives us a chance to see which comments tend to rise to the top and which comments maybe just a few people holding that particular belief. So we need as many people to go into this as possible. We do plan on sharing this with our first selectman so she can actually share it to just community members at large. Because schools are not just about parents and staff, it's also about your business owners and all other taxpayers in the community. So they'll have a chance to have access to this as well. On a positive note also, our food service team continues to work really hard. Mr. Hendrickson is going to talk more about the financials later, but I want to mention that we've now closed the gap of how much we're losing. And so now for February, we lost about $8,000 in our food service program. And this is mostly due to the fact that our food service people are now actually giving away meals for the weekends and for holidays. And so we're able to give more meals away, but use the same amount of staff time. So our expenses are not going up, but the number of reimbursable meals are going up. So our loss is coming down. It's still a sizable loss for the year, over $500,000 or so, and it's going to continue to grow, we believe. But thankfully, we've been able to really decrease that loss. So again, thank you for all of the families for taking the time to make sure they take these meals, because we do get reimbursed for every meal. And thank you for all of our food service workers. I want to tell you that our food service team is working like ridiculously hard to get this done, because not only are they preparing the meals for the kids in the buildings, but they're also putting meals together for the pickups outside. And they're also preparing meals, so when they pick up meals on Friday for the weekend, that's there. And so I really do want to give a significant shout out to our food service people, because they're being asked to do an awful lot. And I thank them. I want to kick it to Dr. Iwaniki for a moment, and then she'll kick it back to me. I want her to give you an update about our professional development day, which was yesterday. Dr. Iwaniki?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and the committee and the board. It's my pleasure to share with you that on March 22nd, we had our Professional Learning Day here at Trumbull Public Schools. We led with a meet and greet from our central office team to allow staff to get to know the new central office team now that we're complete a little bit more, and played a game to let them know our personalities as well as our commitment to Trumbull Public Schools. We had over 27 sessions for teachers to choose from around self-care like Zumba and meditation and mindfulness, instructional practices such as universal design for learning to support all students or increasing student engagement, small group instruction, or even teaching fractions. Digital books and all types of online learning sessions were provided: Book Creator, Audible, Pear Deck, Seesaw, digital notebooks, and more. The special education departments and people service departments also have specific professional development that took place in wellness. The music department had specific, as well as counselors on topics such as post-secondary transition, assessing memory, and dyslexia. Some sessions had over 100 participants, and many staff took advantage of attending at least one of the self-care workshops and were thrilled to be able to spend an hour improving their own well-being. A couple of quotes that we received: I heard incredible things about the PD yesterday, and I'm very proud of the staff being such fabulous PD, quoted a building administrator from our elementary team. Thank you for helping to facilitate meaningful PD sessions today and for giving us the time to practice what we've learned in order to bring it back to our classroom and share it with our students, shared an elementary teacher. The digital notebook session was awesome. I've done seminal organization notebooks in the past, but learning how to do it digitally is something that I definitely am going to use down the road for my students, especially freshmen, quoted one of our high school teachers. Overall, it was a great success, and we really appreciate all that the staff put into providing professional learning for each other. It's a really wonderful day. Thank you.
Just a moment. Because you're part of Marty's report and you're not on your own little item number, I just want to ask the board members if they have any questions on the PD.
Jackie Norcell, I don't have a question, but in the future, Dr. Iwaniki, I would love to get a copy of what the PD is going to be. In the past, we always got a copy ahead of time, and we were encouraged to sign up as a board member. So I, was waiting to see, and I would just suggest for our next PD that, you continue. That was a great practice, and I would have enjoyed being on yesterday.
Wonderful. We can definitely do that.
Thank you. Anyone else, Scott?
Yeah. Thank you, Lucinda. Dr. Iwaniki, thank you very much for that update. I was just curious, how many sessions were staff able to sign up for during the course of the day? And is it totally at their discretion what they choose to sign up for?
It was totally at their discretion what they signed up for, and it depended on the level and what other department initiatives might have been going on. So for example, some of our teachers also took a state mandated foundations of reading test for part of the day. So they might have only been able to sign up for one session or two sessions. Other people had the whole day. Other people worked with their departments on curriculum or sharing practices. So it was teacher choice within the time that was not maybe dedicated to something for certain grade levels or departments.
Very good and excellent. Just a quick follow-up. It sounded like you had got some awesome feedback from folks. Do you do a a quantitative, qualitative survey of staff after we do PD so that you get some hard data back?
We do a self-reflection survey that's mostly qualitative data where they can share feedback about the session that they attended and how it informed their practice.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, I was just going to say, former educator. Get close, Marie. Oh, best PDs is a former educator, teacher choice. You still work hard, you still share ideas, but I think that was a great idea.
Well, we thank the teachers for making it happen, because if they hadn't signed up to do the work to provide it for each other, it wouldn't have been possible. So thank you to all those teachers that were able to do that for each other too.
Thank you. Anyone else with a question for Dr. Iwanaki? Okay, go ahead, continue. Thank you, and Dr. Samu.
All right, and just one last update on this report, which is just budget. We know that the Board of Finance, our budget, the town's budget, currently is in the hands of the Board of Finance. So for folks listening at home, and again, I'll just reiterate, this board supported a 3.81% increase. We participated in 2 meetings with the Board of Finance. They had a lot of questions and we did our best to provide all the responses. They had written questions after each meeting. In fact, we're working on an additional set of questions right now that we received after the last meeting. We'll make sure we get the answers to those questions by this Friday as they requested. I'll remind folks that our 3.81% has to do with 1, rebuilding from a difficult budget year and trying to bring back some of the staff that we lost, but 2, having to deal with the transportation funding cliff, having to deal with the mismanagement of the special revenue accounts and having these deficits that have accrued, and also the increase in our magnet school costs now that we've resolved the legal battle with Bridgeport Public Schools. If we didn't have all those additional situations to contend with, our budget would have come in around 2%, which I shared with everybody at the last Board of Finance meeting. All of the information about our budget is on our website, and people can go to our website and look at all the full presentations if they'd like to know more information. I am concerned. Hold on, I wanted to go back for a second, sorry. One of the things that I'm hearing about, though, is that there's a belief that this grant money we're going to get from the federal government can just sustain us, that we can take a big cut and therefore these grants will be able to help us. And I disagree. And so I don't know exactly what the Board of Finance is going to do, but I want to make it clear that those federal grants are for us to help close the gap, the learning gap that we know we're seeing because of the pandemic since March of 2020. So this is a long period of time for us to be in hybrid or even at home for a long period of time. There are kids who need significant help, and there's lots of kids who just need help. And so that money in the federal grants are to fill that issue, not to fill a budget issue in a town level. So I am concerned that folks are thinking that we could just take that money and use it to bridge a budget gap. But what you'd be creating is just another funding cliff, which people have been concerned about. And so just want to make it clear that Board of Education has done their work. They submitted a 3.81% budget. They supported the administration's full recommendation for what we're looking for. So if we get cut further, the first selectmen's included a 3%. So she was recommending a 0.81% cut. If the Board of Finance doesn't put that back and the town council can only do so much, the Board of Education will be here and they'll have to make a lot of tough decisions. And those tough decisions, is just because you're only afforded so much money. So that's kind of how the process goes. My understanding is the Board of Finance will vote. They need to vote by April 12th. I believe they're going to vote earlier, maybe by April 1st. And so if folks have concerns about our budget, they should reach out to the Board of Finance. It's in their hands at this point. So just want to let people know how that budget process is going, because if you don't pay attention to this yearly, you kind of might not understand how that budget process goes. So I wanted to share that. So that's my complete update, and I'll answer any questions about any parts of that.
Okay, thank you. Next is the board chair report. And the first item I would like to read is about Joe Cavanola. Joe Cavanola was the president of TEA for many years. He was a true leader. He was an excellent collaborator, respectful, kind, and held the best interests of the teachers at heart. I was fortunate to have had the pleasure to work with him. He was a problem solver, a great supporter of all facets of Trumbull Public Schools, and a true gentleman. His pleasant demeanor, welcoming attitude, and approachability were key qualities as he navigated through issues with grace and confidence. His energetic style and effective leadership skills were assets that served all of us well. I truly miss his style, integrity, and his decisiveness. May his soul rest in peace. Godspeed, Joe. Okay. The Board of Ed does support, as you just heard the superintendent, the 3.81 request that he made to us. Currently, it sits at the Board of Finance level, and they are currently holding their hearings. In December of 2019, this current board was sworn in. Upon learning of the issues of mismanagement, this board immediately took steps to remediate the problem. As we move forward with our responsibilities, we are all asking the right questions, and we are now receiving multiple documents to review so that we know what is going on. And we are able to ask questions at any time of the superintendent or the business director. In light of the operational review, we are now 40 of 66 recommendations complete, 21 in progress, 5 unaddressed. The progress can be monitored via the Google Sheet on the Trumbull Public School website for all to view. Our Board of Ed has every confidence in our superintendent, Dr. Semmel, and our business director, Mr. Hendrickson, that all recommendations will be completed by the end of the 2021 school year. But it is important to note that some recommendations may be constrained by the budget. And I want to thank both of them for all their work and their continuous work in keeping us apprised of every financial situation. We all thank you both. Okay, that is my report. Next, we are going to action items. And the first is TPAUD update. Melissa McGarry, how nice to see you, Melissa. How's everything?
We're good. Yeah, Lori Hayes O'Brien is with me here too.
Oh, hi, Lori, that's good. Well, I'm sure you have interesting things for us to learn. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us. I'm going to, I think, be able to share my screen. Let me find what I want to share. Okay, and let's get the slideshow from the beginning. Can you all see that?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. So I'll hand things over to Lori to get us started.
Great, thanks, Melissa. Good to see everyone. We haven't been in front of you for a while, so for some of you, some new board members, this will be an introduction to TPAUD to some extent. Hopefully you've heard of us. What we'd like to talk about tonight is some of the changes we've had to make, as all of us have, right? And then what we're calling a pandemic pivot. But to back up, I just want to tell you a little bit about who we are and what we do and how we do it. And Melissa will give you a lot more details about how that works. So to start off, for those who don't know, TPAUD is our Trumbull's Prevention Partnership. It's a grant-funded community coalition that was formed in 2006 to address high rates of underage drinking. I want to read our mission statement because I think it's important, especially going back to where we were from the beginning. So TPAUD's mission is to engage and mobilize youth, parents, and community partners to reduce alcohol and drug use, foster social emotional health, and create a safe and healthy community. I think it's important for everybody to understand that because as it says here, we in 2006, we really were looking at it as addressing underage drinking, and boy, has that changed. The things that we're doing with TPAUD, as you'll see when Melissa continues down her presentation, have really emerged throughout the years. We're lucky to have a lot of people who have been here from the beginning and can see those changes coming. But I can tell you that in 2006, I don't think we were thinking about vaping or opioids, and now we're thinking about even more. The mental health and social emotional health is drives us in almost everything we do. So I think that mission statement is important. These are our members and partners. So impressive as a group from Trumbull. I will tell you that you can kind of look through this list and these people show up monthly. Every month at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, we get probably a minimum of 20 people sitting at the table, all engaged, all passionate about this subject, all involved and finding ways that they can help. Part of our grant funding requires that we kind of reach out to a lot of different forks of the community. And as you can see here, we certainly have been lucky to do that. The police department has been an integral part for a long time now, the health department, the EMS, so many other groups that you can see here. Parents kind of drove this from the beginning and continue to be an important part. This year we decided to add an executive committee. And the reason for that was to kind of get some fresh ideas, to kind of get an idea of where we were at. You know, it's a little different not seeing everybody in person. So this gives us an opportunity to think some things out. Part of that executive committee is myself. Officer Wes Bartosik is Madison's SRO, and he is an amazing rock star, doing wonderful things through the police department with us. Your own Scott Kerr has been involved with TPAUD for a long time now, right, Scott? And brings a really good history and a lot of great fresh ideas. And Dr. Jessica Samulis is a sacred heart professor and a Trumbull Public School parent. So it's kind of nice to get some fresh perspective from her as well. But I can tell you every member that's listed here, every person that's shown up for the last 15 years has added to the successes of TPAUD. Before Melissa, you move on to the next one, I'm going to flip you back because you can tell that Melissa made these slides and did not include both herself and Kirsten in the executive committee. But what I will tell you about Melissa McGarry and Kirsten Nauman, Melissa is our project director, Kirsten is our program coordinator, and they are the heart and soul of TPAUD. Without them, I don't know what any of this would be happening. Melissa has been here from day one, pregnant with her child who's now in high school, and toddlers running around that are in college. She is committed. She is knowledgeable, nonstop working for us. And Kirsten, who's just been with us a couple of years, is too just what do I want to say? Just it's so much knowledge about prevention and how it works. If she doesn't know something that's going on, she will know, and it'll probably be by the end of the day. We are so lucky to have them both. I cannot stress enough. They're considered part-time employees, but they do the work of 4 full-time people easily. They are truly a Trumbull treasure, and I did not want to get through this without pointing that out. So thank you to both of them. All right, so this is how we work. It's with money. From the beginning, since 2006, TPAUD has procured over $1.8 million in prevention funding for the Trumbull Public Schools. When we first started out all those years ago, you know, we thought we were going to get 5 years out of this and see where it goes. And through the work of, I'll say it again, Melissa and Kirsten, who are, for any of you who are grant writers, know that that's not an easy part of this either. But we continue to bring this money in. You can see here where the money's coming from. Our big funding is through a 5-year drug-free community support program, and that's through the White House and the Center for CDC. We get $125,000 a year and that this one will be until 2024. Each of the fundings usually give us a focus on what they'd like us to concentrate on. So as you can see, this program asks us to focus on alcohol, marijuana, and prescription drugs. Our local prevention council funding from DEMIS, which we got a little over $5,600 for this year, and they asked us to focus on vaping. And our state targeted response opioid prevention grant from DEMIS was also $5,000 through September, and that focuses on opioids. So those are the things that they're asking us to focus on. The good thing about that is there are really creative ways to do that. And as Melissa continues the presentation, you'll kind of see some of the ways we've been able to do that, and especially in this difficult and challenging year. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. And I have to say, I'm very fortunate because we have people at the table since the very beginning. I mean, Lori's children were in middle school, I think, when we started. They are now grown and flown, and having these wonderful volunteers stay involved is just a huge blessing to us because they bring their knowledge and their knowledge of the schools, the town, and the history in a way that really does build us up in a way that we couldn't on our own. Part of doing this work is understanding the community, and the primary way that we do this is through student surveys, which are actually required by our DFC grant funding. We're required to do them every 2 years. We've been very fortunate because we've been administering student surveys since 2007. And prior to that, the public schools always participated in the RIASAP Search Institute survey. So we have a long, rich history of surveying our students on these topics. We survey every student in Trumbull Public Schools in grades 7 to 12. We were very fortunate. We snuck our last surveys in last November and December before the pandemic hit. So we do have a lot of data from there, which unfortunately I was supposed to present to you last March, but we all know what happened. So the next surveys that we're scheduled to do are in November at the high school and in December at the middle schools of 2021. So the reason why these surveys are so important to us is that they capture the current trends and norms. They give us a snapshot of our kids, what they're up to, what their behaviors are, what their protective factors are, how easy it is to get substances, their perceptions, and it actually captures what we in the DFC world call the 4 core measures, which is looking at past 30-day use, perception of harm, perception of parental disapproval, and perception of peer disapproval. The last time that we did the survey in 2019, we did add some additional questions around depression, and we also asked kids whether they identified as a member of the LGBTQ community or as an ally. So we have some more richness to our data than we have in the past on those topics. We also do parent surveys. We did an online parent survey last spring during the shutdown and got, I think, 600 parents to respond, which was amazing. And then we're frequently doing key informant interviews, and we're always gathering data from our partners and regional and state data sources. So we're always kind of trying to use the data to provide the picture of what's going on in the community. The data also is our measuring stick of how effectively we're doing the work. It's very important you understand that we use a very specific public health prevention model. All our prevention strategies are data-driven and evidence-based. We also focus on the environment. We typically focus on the environment around the students. So we look at what are the local risk factors that protect youth or might add to substance use. And almost everything we do, you will notice, either addresses one of these 4 things. We are always looking to increase students' and parents' perception of harm. We're always looking to foster family norms and rules that discourage substance use. We look to reduce access to substances, and we look to enforce existing laws to hold mostly the adults accountable. I'm not going to give you the big survey dog and pony show because, as we said, the data is now almost 1.5 years old. But I think it's important to show you some of the trend lines that we have noticed because they're mostly positive. So, our bread and butter when we started this was alcohol and binge drinking. And I just want to show you the trends where we started off 26% of our kids in grades 7 to 12 reported binge drinking, which is for multiple drinks in a short period of time, and we're down to 6%. And 37% of our 7th to 12th graders reported past 30-day alcohol use, and we're down to about 13% now. So the trend lines are incredibly positive and encouraging for those of us who are, spend our waking hours thinking about this stuff. I wanted to show you not only is it alcohol, but it's also other substances where we're seeing the trend lines moving in the right direction. You'll notice some gaps in data just because not everybody was asking questions on topics like we weren't really asking about vaping in 2013. But you'll see like prescription drugs, cigarettes, dropping. Vaping, we had a jump in 2017, just like everybody else did, because that's the year Juuls came out and started really targeting our kids. But then we saw back in 19, we saw a drop back down a bit. And then marijuana does seem to be like steadily declining, but we'll talk a little bit about our thoughts on that one. But I did also want to show you that the high school data, we still see that step stair. I've talked to you before about this, where we've done a really great job of reducing youth use at the 9th grade level and the 10th grade level, but we do see a steady increase at the junior and senior level. And a lot of that has to do with, freedom. That's about when they're getting their driver's licenses. It also has to do with some cultural norms about getting ready for college and what's acceptable to our kids, and parents probably taking a step back in anticipation of their kids going off. So we still have some work to do on targeting our upperclassmen. I can say that prevention has worked. Prevention has definitely shifted the age at which our kids are engaging in these with these substances. And I also wanted to show you kind of just a snapshot of where we are when you compare us to the state and to the national data. So I think that also shows that we're seeing some really bright news, some really good news about what we're doing in Trumbull, and the fact that putting this spotlight on prevention and building it into the culture does actually reap benefits compared to our peers, state and nationally. So that's really I could talk data forever because I love it, but there were a few takeaway messages that we took out of our data. And prevention works, but you need the community behind you. You need the collaboration, and the coalition needs. We're fortunate. We've built. I have wanted to change our name for the last 5 years because our mission is broadened, but members who are longstanding members want us to stay as TPAUD because they feel like we're known as TPAUD, and we have an identity in this community, and we are known as a resource. We're very proud of that. What we learned is parents have influence. When we look at the data, the Trumbull youth who don't know their parents disapprove are more than 3 times likely to drink and more than 7 times likely to use marijuana. So it's important to engage parents in prevention. Even while rates are dropping, students are reporting easy access to all substances. So the kids aren't doing it, but they're telling us they could get almost anything. And our qualitative data says that's social media in a nutshell. Their networks are huger than we ever could imagine, and kids are very open about their use on social media, so kids know where they can get substances. We are seeing, even while our marijuana use has dropped a little bit, we are seeing perception of harm dropping too. So when kids tell us that they don't think something is harmful, it's commonly accepted that kids will then use it more. So that raises some real alarm bells for us. The other good side of this, majority of middle school, majority of high school students felt that teachers and other students cared about them. So that was great. There's a lot of positive. Kids know where the resources are, or they did in November and December of 2019 when everyone was still in the building. But we also saw, as we've reported in the past, there's a significant number of students who report a great deal of extreme stress around things like academics. And because we asked the depression sadness question for the first time ever, we were particularly interested in this data point, and 1/3 of high school students reported feeling sad or depressed to the point where they couldn't do their normal activities for a 2-week period. So this certainly jumped out at us, but it's also important to remember that this data point is pre-COVID. So we don't yet know what those numbers would look like now that kids are feeling less connected to their schools and their peers and such. So that's just one of the takeaway messages. This is what our work normally looks like. We look at outreach, which is building partnerships. We're doing education around parent to parents and students and community members. We're doing enforcement activities. We're with the police department, and we're doing coalition training. That's our normal kind of cycle. Now, obviously, March of last year, we had to like completely pivot. We call it the prevention pandemic pivot. So we had to look at how do you reach parents when you're no longer at the community events and you're no longer meeting them in person, and how do you reach kids when you're not going to the health fairs and you're not going into the classrooms, and how do we do this from a distance? We had to step back a little bit and realize that everyone needed to be treated gently, and we had to focus on mental health and forging connections and publicizing the supports for it that were out there, which is not normally where, you know, our focus has always been on. We also realized that there was some real emerging trends on access. So you saw the way the governor loosened up all the alcohol sale rules in the state. Now you could like drink, you could wait to pick up your food and the bottle of wine would be on the takeout table at the curb. You had people drinking in the car, waiting for their restaurant tables. You had takeout and home delivery booming. So we had to think about what that meant for the amount of alcohol that was in kids' homes, but also how to support businesses so that they weren't selling to kids. It's harder to card when people are wearing a mask. It's harder to card when someone's sitting in the driver's seat and you're just putting their margaritas in the trunk of their car when they pick up their tacos. You know, like it just, everything got a little more challenging. We realized that we still need to, we were starting to get more and more data that kids were self-medicating during the shutdown with vaping and marijuana. Alcohol is still perceived as a social substance, but vaping and marijuana is perceived as like a self-medicating, soothing, help me with my stress substance. So we needed to figure out how to educate parents and students about this. And then we had the other thing is we needed to keep our coalition engaged. You know, we're used to being in this Trumbull EMS together, and we know each other, and and we had to figure out how to keep our coalition engaged. And we've done a lot of training this year. We've trained on risk factors, we've trained on CBD, we've trained on marijuana commercialization. We did a 3-part training on implicit bias in prevention, where we looked at how do our own biases around age, around gender and sexuality, and around race impact how we communicate with our audience and how we reach our audience. And some of the things we've had to tweak are minor. You know, we don't, although I've used the word parents a lot, we try when we're talking to people to talk about the grown-ups. You know, not every child is living with parents. Not everyone's child is living with a mom and a dad, and making sure that when we talk to kids that we talk about, you know, talk to your grown-up. So some of it's just language, some of it's looking at how we can approach different communities that we want to engage in the work. So I want to show you some samples because I think I don't know how many of you have seen all this kind of the work we've done. So this is kind of early pandemic. We rebranded, we got a new logo, and we think it's a little friendlier and a little warmer than our old like caution sign looking logo. But we used our first set of postcards that went home to every household in Trumbull to just advertise and publicize the supports that are out there in the community, because we knew people were like really just, you know, it was bad, right? Like we had people that were losing their jobs and getting furloughed and or were home. And so we wanted to post, we tried to do some support of the kids. We helped support the graduation ceremony that they held. We sent the community wellness. This is a trifold brochure we had actually designed the summer of 2019. The inside has a whole list of social emotional supports. We were sending these to households, every household in Trumbull. And they're also all over town. I've seen them in Long Hill when I'm in there. We brought programming into town. So we sponsored a program in June on missed milestones and helping your kids navigate their new realities and mourning the losses of the ceremonies that we expect to be part of our childhoods. We brought a program in, and unfortunately it happened to be scheduled for the night of the tropical storm Isaias. So we had to move that around, but we did a program for college students, kids, post-high school kids, that was looking at suicide prevention, but also overdose prevention, like how to spot if someone has drank too much, what to do if you find someone who you think has had an opioid overdose. They got Narcan kits. It was the first time anyone had done paired these things together. We have worked with my friend Abby. We've sponsored a bunch of their Get Real conversations, which are all about mental health and suicide prevention. And we also offered a 2-part youth mental health first aid training course in November, which was, I think, a fair chunk of the attendees were Trumbull teachers who gave up their nights, 2 nights, to learn about how to intervene if you see a young person suffering a mental health emergency. So that was a really great program, and we're looking to do more of that over the summer as well. We did programs for parents around. We offered screenagers, which they could access digitally, which was the follow-up to the screenagers we sponsored a couple of years ago, that everyone could watch from home. We offered Hidden in Plain Sight virtually, which is like a guided tour of a kid's bedroom where you learn where kids might be hiding illicit materials or hiding drugs or alcohol. So that was really useful. And then we co-sponsored with a number of other coalitions a presentation by Trisha Dale from Yale, who is a really brilliant speaker on latest vaping trends and what Yale has learned about how to help kids stop vaping. We continue to focus on safe medication storage and disposal. That's part of our opioid grant. We really do feel that because we're dealing with kids and families mostly, that the best thing we can do is encourage people to dispose of the medications that are in their homes. So when the police station reopened their medication lockbox, I think every household in Trumbull got a postcard about that. We have been giving out medication lockboxes. We've been doing it through social services, through the senior center, through the health department. We're looking at maybe teaming up with the school nurses to see about giving these out to students who they know have prescriptions, just to get people in the habit of locking up their medications. We also distributed hundreds of these Datura bags, which are medication deactivation bags. So those went out through pharmacies, and they went out through social services. They went out, I think we even put them in some of our, we did some outreach with the school lunch, the school meal pickup. So we were giving resource brochures and some other things through there. So we partnered with that team as well. The other thing that we spent a lot of time working on is this Let's Mention Prevention campaign. And I talked earlier about alcohol sales and the changes in the laws. We are very lucky we have Dave Ratigliano at the table with us as a local restaurant owner, and he's the one who brought this to our attention. And so we worked with a number of other coalitions and developed this Let's Mention Prevention whole campaign that we gave to restaurants, which was, here's a guide for your staff on how to sell alcohol safely in a pandemic. So we make sure you're on the right side of the law. They very generously put bag inserts with the takeout alcohol, just to remind families that it's important to lock up your alcohol and control your alcohol so the kids don't get it. And then we did a social media campaign. So we acknowledged all the restaurants and all the liquor stores that partnered with us. And we also did a campaign targeting parents with just reminders. And this Let's Mention Prevention campaign, which started out just kind of from an idea at our table, went to a group of 7 coalitions, has now been picked up by the Governor's Prevention Partnership and is being worked on to roll it out statewide. So we are super proud of this. And it's now, what we love about it, because we worked with a really great marketing firm, is that we can apply it to every substance. So you'll see as I go forward, you'll start seeing this Let's Mention Prevention hashtag and moniker and branding on other things that we do, like this. So with our vaping grant, we worked with 11 coalitions. So we each contributed a little bit of money and we got this amazing product out of it. We have a virtual guide for parents on how to talk to their kids about vaping. So it's this phenomenal guide. It can be accessed virtually. We are going to print some copies, we decided today, to distribute around town, but it came also with these targeted social media posts that we have been purchasing Facebook ad time so that it targets directly the populations that we're looking to target. It's also coming in, what isn't finalized is a video for teens and some further social media posts around vaping. So it's, for like $2,000, we are now bought into like a $25,000 campaign, which was just a great way of seeing like the collaboration of all the coalitions that are working on this around the state. Couple programs that we have coming up. So April 6th, we have a really wonderful speaker, Liz Jorgensen. She's kind of well known in the region. She's going to we're doing a Zoom presentation for parents about weeding out the facts about today's marijuana and what parents need to know about vaping THC and how to talk to our kids. So that's coming up. And then after that, we're doing Hidden in Plain Sight again, which is, as I said, is the tour of the bedrooms. We have convinced the presenters to allow us to film it. They don't typically let people film it. So we will be filming this and making it available to also our administrators and school resource officers, because I think it's also useful for them to know that, hey, did you know you can buy soda cans that the bottom twists off and people can hide stuff in it. So we thought it was also useful to give it to our administrators, and it will be offered on Trumbull Community Television as well. So we're excited about that. We do a lot of curricular infusion as well as part of our work. We were, unfortunately, because of the constraints, there was no DARE program for the 5th graders this year, but working with Wes Bartosik, who is one of the school resource officers who delivers DARE to 5th graders. He delivers the Keeping It Real program. He is taking some of the key messages out of that curriculum, and he is going to be filming them, some of the lessons, and we're going to be able to make it available to 5th grade parents and their children so they don't miss that kind of piece of prevention. I don't think Wes knew when he joined TPAUD that we were going to make him a star of television, but he's brilliant. So he's super excited about it, and we're looking to make that available during National Prevention Week, which is the first week of May. Historically, we had purchased a curriculum for the 6th grade health classes called Keep a Clear Mind. And despite our requests for years for them to update it, they hadn't, and it didn't really fit what our kids were grappling with anymore, because it didn't talk about vaping, and it felt stale. Kirsten, almost entirely on her own, kind of developed a series of booklets for the 6th grade, and they're virtual. They're actually online booklets for kids about topics. It's called Talking About. So it's talking about alcohol, talking about vaping. And it's a homework assignment for 6th grade health. And the kids complete activities with their families. And it helps kids talk about how they might refuse. It's all about building refusal skills and starting the family conversation. And since we started working with the 6th grade health curriculum, we've seen a huge jump in the number of parents who say they've had conversations with their kids in early middle school, which is what we want. I mean, we want prevention at the earliest possible point. So this was rolled out in the fall and is being used by the 6th grade health classes. Kirsten and I are guest speakers in all 7th grade health classes. So we go into a class and kind of do a lesson on the dangers of vaping and marijuana specifically. We talk about marketing and a little bit of marketing literacy and how kids are targeted by these companies. And it's always a really great day to be with the 7th graders. They're amazing. 9th grade, this is probably the event most of the board members are probably most familiar with, which is the Freshman Forum. That's in the curriculum for 9th grade health. It's typically an in-person event. We get about 1,200 people show up. So the logistics of that is pretty challenging. It's almost entirely volunteer driven. It was started by Laura Hayes O'Brien and Vicky Tesoro and a bunch of concerned parents, and kind of morphed into a TPAUD event after a couple of years. This year, we had to pivot big time. So we offered it virtually. It was pre-recorded, and students accessed it through their Google Classroom and then they then had to answer open-ended questions about the series of videos that we offered as part of the forum so that we could have some accountability that they actually did participate. And I think in the end, Dennis McLaughlin said every 9th grader except 6 did it. Watch the forum, which in this day and age is like a huge home run for us. And having the support of Sarah Scrofani and Dennis McLaughlin, and then also Mark Garino and Dr. Semmel filled his piece. And I think I was really proud of what we were all able to pull together. Some of it was really effective to film the police at the police station, instead of having them just stand by a podium, like just having them in their own environment, being able to show kids, where you get locked up if we have to arrest you, or showing them the drop box, or showing them the dispatch center. I think it was really effective. We were able to interview a couple of young people in recovery, and I think that also was really effective. So super proud of that. that we did it. Most other communities have abandoned their 9th grade forums this year. They just thought it was too much and just kind of skipped a year, and we didn't. I think we pushed it back a week in the end. So I'm very proud about that. And then finally, with the 12th grade, transitions health class, the high school approached us because they had found a video about the dangers of prescription drug misuse. It's a perfect fit. So we were able to provide that for them, to provide the funding for them. And that is now part of the 12th grade health. So we're trying to hit, obviously we've got some gaps, like we kind of missed the 10th and 11th graders, but looking for ways to fill that. A couple other things we're working on. We are working with a group of young people through the First Selectman's Office. There's a new group of kids. There are about 20 of them that applied to be the First Selectman's Youth Advisors. They're focusing more on wellness and mental health and positive youth engagement, and they're an amazing group of kids. So we're really excited. They're meeting monthly, and we're meeting Sunday nights at Zoom, Sunday nights on Zoom, hoping to see them in person at the end of April. Fingers crossed, because we haven't met them yet. We just talked to them on Zoom. Our partnership with the Trumbull Community Television has been a huge blessing for us. They record every program we are allowed to record, and then they offer them on demand sporadically throughout the year. No other coalition has a relationship like we do with our local television. So I can't say enough. And they've been doing all the filmings for things like the 9th grade forum and for like the replacement for DARE. They are just, they're talented, and they do a wonderful job. They're open to our ideas, and I can't praise them enough. We're doing a lot of education about pending legalization. Obviously, cannabis commercialization is an enormous concern for us. And also, you probably heard there's a proposal at the state level to ban flavored nicotine products. So we've also been doing a lot of education around that. We've been educating and advocating for an expansion of the parks policy in Trumbull to make parks and recreation spaces all smoke-free, vape-free. We're working with the library right now to put together a curated collection of prevention resources and parent-led curricula. So Dr. Samulis, who's on our executive board, is her expertise. Her expertise is substance abuse prevention programs. So she's finding us curricula that we can offer that parents can check out from the library over the summer. So we're working with the library on that. We are also working on a counterfeit prescription drug education campaign that'll fall under the Let's Mention Prevention moniker, to address kind of what we've heard on the news and at the local level about young people who have unfortunately thought they were buying a prescription medication and ended up buying fentanyl and overdosing. So we're working on that with the opioid. And then we're also, as I mentioned earlier, looking at prescription drug safe storage. We are, as I said, really worried about cannabis, high potency THC products, especially if it's commercialized in Connecticut and readily available to our kids. We're worried about edibles. We're worried about anything that increases access of THC and cannabis to our children. We're worried, we're thinking about what does social hosting look like post-pandemic? How are parents, are there ways that the culture is going to shift to be more permissive because so many kids have lost so many social opportunities. So we need to keep educating around the social host law and the reasons why it's not a great idea to, it's a dangerous idea to host kids who are drinking or doing other things in your home. We are very concerned about the isolation and disconnect that we're hearing about kids from school and community and from their normal supports. Demas just commissioned a whole load of focus groups at the state level, and that's what emerged, is that the kids who are isolated are using primarily vaping and marijuana to deal with the isolation. So we know disconnect from the community and disconnect from school is a major risk factor for substance use. So we're certainly concerned about that. And we're concerned about the strains on the support system. We're used to going to these kids and saying, hey, if you have a problem, just find an adult, go to the adults. And unfortunately, a lot of the adults are struggling. And it's wonderful to hear that self-care was a big part of yesterday's PD, because we do worry that the whole system is strained and how that's going to impact our kids and our families and our staff. Like, I worry about substance use, not only for the kids, but also for the adults, because I think that it's been a really, so challenging for so many people. We're thinking about how to reach and support high-risk groups such as the LGBTQ kids. The data shows that they engage in almost every risk factor at higher levels than their peers. So how do we work with them to identify what we can do to support them? We did just work with Trumbull High. They're going to distribute ally pins around the school so that kids staff and students can identify themselves as an ally, which I think is great. And we used, we provided the pins for that just as a small token of kind of engagement. How do we re-engage with the schools? We've backed off from the schools a lot this year because there's some, the focus has to be on, the basics, but how do we re-engage? How does TPAUD get back into all the events we used to be back into with? And how do we reach those kids? How do we continue to reach parents? And how can we best engage with Trumbull Public Schools, your social emotional learning efforts as a resource, as a partner? Like how can we, TPAUD, be involved with those efforts going forward? So that's kind of what's kind of spinning around. That's a lot of our conversations at TPAUD kind of hit a lot of these. And this is something we're really, focused on talking about. I encourage anyone who's watching to become a prevention partner. Our meetings are on Zoom. They're at 8 in the morning. Our next one's April 21st, but we also have a pretty robust mailing list where I send out information about what's coming up and what's the trends. Our social media, we are posting all the time. So please, and then we've reworked our website. So that's also got a really great trove of resources and connections for people. So it's been a busy year. So we thank you for your support. We thank the Trumbull Public Schools, the administration, and the staff. But I don't know if anyone has any questions.
If anyone has any questions, first I want to say thank you very much for the detailed report. And I see that you've expanded in different areas, and that's great. And I'm glad everything is working out well. Thank you to Lori for coming in and helping also. Let me ask, does anyone have a question from the board? You did a very detailed and very explicit presentation. Thank you. I guess not. It was so good, Melissa. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing the survey results with us. And I just have one question, if it's okay, Melissa. The SRO participation at the 5th grade was a video. Are you using the same SRO participation in the middle and high school?
Sorry, for the DARE? No,
For any other program, different programs in middle and high. Are you using the SROs at any point there?
Scott, Officer Duva, who's the SRO at the high school, is a member of TPAUD. He attends all our meetings and we work with him when it comes up. It's just, I think he works directly with the health department in terms of what they need from him to do support. So I think it's more of an ad hoc relationship. The reason Wes Bartosik is on our executive committee is that's who Chief Lombardo designated. So we asked him for the contact and he recommended Wes.
That's terrific. Okay, I just wondered, anyone else with a question?
I just wanted to close out by, yeah, Lucinda, if I could, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Melissa and Lori, for coming. It was astounding. I mean, I have, having sat at the coalition table for a number of years, it is the most impressive experience to when we used to actually sit at the table and look around at the expertise and the diverse group of people. Go back and look at that slide when we get the deck about all those folks that show up every month. It's really something. And also, when I look at this deck, if you hadn't told us up front what your grant funding is, I would guess you were spending 2 to 3 times what you are. I mean, this is an incredible amount of work that you guys are doing for a very affordable amount of money, really. And then you go, part of your work is to go out and raise that money too. So we can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Lucinda.
Okay, our next is the approval of the minutes. I'm going to need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the March 9th, 2021 meeting.
I need a second.
I can second that.
And Tim Gallo seconds. Any amendments to those minutes or questions? No? Okay, I'll take the vote. Tim?
I'm in favor.
Marie? Mike?
Yes, in favor.
Jackie,
I'm in favor.
Scott,
In favor.
Allison? In favor. And Lucinda, in favor. Okay, thank you. Our next is personnel, Dr. Summer.
Sorry, I was not at the right page.
Okay.
We only have one item for personnel list tonight. We'll just flip to the right page.
But it is a big one.
It is a big one. We have a resignation. Ms. Pat Ferlisi, who is the principal at Middlebrook Elementary School since August 1996, is retiring effective June 30th, 2021. I did kid around with Pat a little bit. I told her I would just tell the board to not accept her resignation and see how that goes. But anyways, we do recommend the acceptance of her resignation, but sadly.
With that being said, I guess I'm compelled to make the motion that we accept, unfortunately, the resignation of Patricia Frilisi, who was principal at Middlebrook Elementary School since August 1996, and she will be retiring effective June 30th, 2021.
I need a second.
I'll second that, and I would like to say a couple
It's
of
a-
words.
Just a second. Okay. Anyone who would like to comment?
Yes, I would. I first met Pat when she was my PTA president over at Tashua. She talked many times with me and then decided to go back to school. She became a math specialist in the district and then, of course, principal at Middlebrook. Pat is a very caring person and she dots her I's and crosses her T's. I knew she would always know what was going on at Middlebrook, being the second largest elementary school. I'm very proud to have seen her when she became principal. It seems like everyone I had as little under me reaching their potential are all retiring. Soon we'll have a whole new group in town, but she was just wonderful to work with, a hard worker.
Yes, she is. And I worked with her on the teacher evaluation committee when I was working, and she is a very hard worker. Congratulations to you, Pat. Great thing for you.
Just a quick note, I'll echo what Mrs. Norzella is saying, and working with Pat too, as principal of Blue Hill School. A nice young person and an excellent lady person. We're gonna miss her very much so. She has the big responsibility as working at Middlebrook for so many years, and it's the largest elementary school in town. For many years before Pat arrived, we used to have a vice principal there, but that was eliminated by budget. But Pat didn't, she kept going, then she had an excellent staff. She'll be sorely missed, Madam Chairman.
I know, we'll all miss her. Well, congratulations, Pat. Okay, we have a motion on the floor in a second. I'm gonna take the vote. Tim,
I am in favor.
Marie, Mike,
Yes, in favor?
Jackie,
Yes, in favor.
Scott,
Yes, in favor.
Allison, in favor, and Lucinda in favor. Okay. Our next item is the SBAC update, Dr. Iwaniki.
And she's just bringing up the presentation for you on screen.
Next time, Dr. Iwaniki, we're gonna need copies of this. Sure. Thanks.
There we go. Okay, so really briefly, we just wanted to give you an overview of SBAC 2021, a little bit about our test this year and the timeline, what the district has been doing to prepare, the trainings we're providing for our staff, and any curricular supports. The test this year, the Smarter Balanced Assessment, is a summative assessment. It's very similar to previous years. It takes place in grades 3 through 8. It's a computer adaptive test which means that it changes. If the student gets an answer correct, it might become more difficult. And if they get an answer wrong, then it becomes easier. This is perceived to give students less stress. There's also a mathematics performance task element where students might be given a task like planting a garden in different types of flowers, and they have to do the math, the arithmetic, the planning, and combine different mathematical skills to show their knowledge. There's also a side where they are able to use this test within the school system to think about what is the student achievement on the Common Core state standards and what is the growth of students. It's used as part of our program evaluation for our school, our district, and our state accountability system. We wanted to note that this did not take place last year due to COVID. So the timeline this year is that last week we had district-wide training of building-based testing coordinators so that everyone could learn how to administer the test and then roll that out within their schools. April 27th to May 20th is the Trumbull Public Schools window in which the principals will organize their testing. May 3rd, many of them will be starting their testing within that window. And through June 4th, we have time for any additional makeups that can take place. That's a little longer than in the past because they know that with COVID and other factors going on, we may need more time this year. The approximate timing of the SBAC window, I know we get a lot of questions about our students spending all day testing, but you'll notice that in grades 3 through 5, the adaptive test is allotted an hour and 30 minutes or a 90-minute block, which most students do not use that entire 90-minute block. The same thing for grades 6 through 8, and likewise for their mathematics assessment tasks. So overall, students spend about 4 hours, but again, many of them finish early and might have time to do some reading, etc. And that's over a course of multiple weeks. So contrary to when we gave the CMT years ago, when you might have hours of testing, students are generally not testing for very long per day. The preparation and training that we're really offering is that we had all the districts complete the school-based testing coordinator training. Our testing materials were delivered this week, and all of our technology has been upgraded with our Chrome with the correct version that's needed. So special thanks to all the people that have been helping to make sure our Chromebooks are where they need to be for that testing. The remote administration is a question that we've gotten a lot. What will all remote learners do? The State Department is asking that students come to school for SBAC testing and that the remote version only be used for situations in which there is no other option. The state is still working through some of the logistics for that remote testing module, which they're launching 30 days after the launch window for regular online testing. Because our testing coordinators and our tech integrators are so savvy, they've been already trying to figure out how to use this, and they've noted that the remote testing console has a video conferencing capability built into the platform. So in other words, while a student is taking a test, they could have a video if they have to take it at home with the teacher kind of showing them what to do or how to start the test. The district has tested this and is ready for those very few people that will have to use that option. In addition, we also make sure that testing is a part of the school life, K through 12, and definitely even in college, students take tests. So we try to make sure it's part of a curriculum, and that we want to remind everyone that we're not teaching the test, but we're teaching the Common Core throughout the course of the year. And this is just test taking is one of the things that you do in school. We make sure that we highlight test taking strategies and that students get a chance to practice through the interim assessment blocks, which I'll talk about a little bit more. We also have SBAC coach books at some levels. For example, our middle school uses that to really kind of talk to kids about what does the test look like and what will they ask and what are strategies that can help you. The interim assessment blocks are free. They're at no cost to the district. They're also on the computer using the same test delivery system so that children won't feel as though they're unfamiliar with how to take the test. There's a scope, sequence, and number of timed interim assessments, which our district can select and our schools can select. And a teacher can even administer an interim assessment looking at what students are above or below a certain Common Core standard and identify the areas of strength and the weaknesses prior to learning. Well, this year, we've also talked a lot about mindset when we're doing our trainings to really say that, this is one point of data in the child's experience. There's a lot besides this test that makes their achievement possible and how we know whether they've learned. It's just one part of their learning journey, and talked a little bit about focusing on positivity and the perspectives in test taking, that it's okay if you didn't understand an answer, if you make a mistake, and also supporting them and saying how well they're going to do. This is a test that Trumbull Public School students have done very well on in the past, but we want our students to feel supported throughout the experience. And looking at that historical data, the last time we gave the Smarter Balance student, Trumbull Public Schools met or exceeded the state goal in almost 70% or higher in all grade levels, which is absolutely outstanding. So you can see that data here that students are very high performing, and we hope that we will continue that trend despite some possible impact in these last few years with our online learning. And that's our update for tonight. Are there any questions I might be able to ask for you or answer for you, rather?
Anyone with a question for Dr. Iwaniki?
Yes. Lucinda, it's Scott.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Iwaniki, I'm interested about the IAs you referred to, the interim assessments. Are those, do we give other interim assessments in addition to the SBAC aligned ones, or are we relying solely on those for our IAs?
We give other assessments that are more common formative assessments. So there might be, for example, writing prompts are part of the writer's workshop model. And so teachers might give on-demand writing assessments, and there are other assessments that we give that are part of the formative assessments that teachers give. But the IABs, or the interim assessment blocks, are the computerized type that really mimics the SBAC experience, that are correlated with the Common Core and can give that information back to the school or the teacher that's using them.
And how frequently are they given? Like how many times a year are the IAs given? The IABs?
Interim assessment block. It depends on how the teacher is using them and how the school is using them. So they might give one that's particularly on a few standards, or a particular that's related to a particular unit of study, just to give feedback about what they might do in that unit. They might get that same information in another formative assessment and decide not to use the IAB in that case. So it depends on instructionally what the team decides to use for that piece.
And do you mind talking a little bit about how we use STAR in the district similarly?
So we also have other assessments that we give, such as STAR, iReady, and the DRP. And each one of those also give more information about how students are performing at each level. Those are also used in terms of placement in some cases to determine how close students are in terms of meeting the benchmark or the nationally norm standards through something like the DRP.
Marie?
I'm curious, I would think that with remote learning all over the state, everyone's kind of prepared for scores to go down a little. Is that what they're saying out there, or?
We're still looking at our data, but the initial glances would show that many of our schools have only a small decrease in terms of the students last year versus the students this year in the same grade level. But we're still gathering that data. We just ended in quarter and trimester rather for grades. So we can't really say at this point. But I have had some conversations with teachers who are extremely concerned, and I've had others who are like, "You're doing great," especially thanks to our families that have been very supportive.
I think I'm not saying so much on Trumbull, but overall the state, I would think the trend would be there.
I think as a state, you're very correct, because there's other districts that are not as fortunate as Trumbull in terms of the access to technology, family structures, et cetera. So that has been a state level discussion for sure.
Anyone else with a question? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Our next is the reopening update, Dr. Semmel.
All right, let's talk a little bit about reopening schools. We like to do this every time we meet. I think it's important to note that the CDC has announced that a 3-foot distance for our students is now acceptable. I will say we have been following this practice all year long. We knew from early on that the American Pediatrics Association, I might have that group wrong a little bit, but they recommended 3 feet from the beginning. And so, especially with our elementary schools, we brought all those elementary students back October, November, and they've been about 3 feet away from each other. And that's when they're sitting in their chairs as they've been laid out. But if you ever go into a first grade classroom, you'll know that that's not exactly how they end up. And so you got to keep pushing them back to where they belong. And our teachers have done great work with that. But it was good to see that the CDC has moved in this direction. I believe that's more for national purposes because the state of Connecticut has been opening up. And if they stayed at 6 feet from a national perspective, that is hard to open up schools. So I think they're giving permission to all the schools nationally to think that way. It has not, though, changed our contact tracing and quarantining rules. There's been some question out there. Does this mean now that those rules have changed? And the answer is no. They're sticking with the contact trace, which is if you're 6 feet for 15 minutes or more during a 24-hour period, then you're considered a close contact. So we're getting that question a little bit from parents, but that has not, part of it has changed. The part that has changed around quarantining is for adults. Adults who have had their final shot of the vaccine and are 14 days past that final shot no longer need to quarantine if they are a close contact. This is very helpful to us in terms of keeping our schools open in terms of that. So, and I just want to make sure I tell people that the 6 foot, 15-minute rule around close contacts and quarantining, that is not a Trumbull Public Schools rule. Some folks think that way. It is a CDC, Department of Public Health guideline around close contacts. And it's out there on the CDC website. Tomorrow, very exciting news, we are back in school on Wednesdays. People have known this, and we've been sharing that information, but this, I just think it's exciting for me because we're finally able to return to our schools. Those big yellow buses will be out there on Wednesdays again, picking up our kids, dropping them off at their schools for those half days. As we know, we approved a new calendar, so we have half days through April 28th at this point. Starting on Monday, March 29th, we have decided that we will be bringing back all of our middle school students. So the last time we spoke, I said we were targeting March 29th. We have to finalize that decision. Principals at the middle schools have been communicating that. I will be putting out a monthly update tomorrow, just also reiterating that. But March 29th, we'll bring back all of our middle school students. Yes, the remote option remains an option. So we are bringing all of our students back, though, who want to come back. Middle school principals have been diligently working to make sure we can do this in a safe manner. The lunch situation was the trickiest part. They wanted to make sure that was all set, and it is all set. So for the high school, we are targeting April 26th as the latest start date for their return. So I've been talking to Mr. Garino and his team about returning high school folks. It's more complicated at the high school level just because there's just so many more kids and they're looking at all the survey data. I'll tell you, the middle school principals ended up calling all the parents who didn't respond to the survey. So it was like probably like 40 to 50 at each school that didn't respond. There's more at the high school level, so they're doing more work to try to make sure they're clear so they can see how that will impact each of their classes. So that's why we're still targeting April 26th as the latest date for the return, but I'm hoping we can do it earlier. We do currently have about 10% of our students at the elementary level that are on remote learning. So we've been seeing a consistent path of kids returning to the elementary school. So 90% of our kids are now full in person, which I think is just terrific. 20% of our middle school students are remote, and about 40% of our high school students are still on remote. And my final just request around reopening is that I mentioned those big yellow buses. I would just put a plea in for our parents to use them. I think given a whole host of reasons, people are not using the buses. I spoke to Dawn Perkins, our transportation expert. She says she's getting a lot of calls, parents saying, I want my kid to get on the bus. What do I need to do? I will tell you, all you need to do is put your child at the bus stop at the time, at the right time, per the schedule, and the bus will come by. Because we've been following the same bus pickups as we have been. But we know that traffic around our schools is a problem. And our solution is the buses. We have a great solution. Using the bus system would really reduce the traffic around town. We're taking other steps as well, but I just wanted to point that out. So we're excited about the fact that we continue to make these continual progress about reopening. And I've talked to a few high school students. They're very excited to get all their fellow students back into the building, at least to the ones that I happened to run into in the hallways as I was visiting the high school last week. So that's my reopening update. Be happy to answer any questions on that.
Anyone with a question?
One quick one on the buses. Students in elementary having assigned seats?
They do.
Okay, so parents will know once they get picked up, child will know what seat he's supposed to be in.
Yeah, and you know what, as we're returning more and more, they're getting those assigned seats. But yes, my understanding is that every child actually has a seat assigned to them on the bus. We know that there will always be children who won't take the bus. So, if things change and the buses start to get a little more full, they might need to look at what's going on the bus. But for contact tracing purposes, we did that at the elementary level.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. Semmel, I had a question. So as we bring students back, what are class sizes looking like with the 3-foot rule? How are we doing with those numbers? Have we been able to reduce class sizes a little bit with bringing students back?
So with the fact that we have, say, 10%, 20%, and 40% of our remote learners, that's what's helping reduce some of our class sizes. As more and more kids at the elementary have come back, it's gotten tighter. But the building principals work with every classroom teacher and their work to try to reduce the amount of furniture in the classroom so they can achieve that 3 feet.
Because it is a formula that you have to kind of look at the room and look at the space and see how many students can really fit in there at 3 feet.
Correct. And one of the things that they had to do at the middle school level is not all classrooms are created equally. There are smaller classrooms and there are larger classrooms. And so they've talked about maybe moving a class to a larger classroom space. So they've had all those individual conversations about that. But being completely transparent, when you go into an elementary classroom with all of their kids back, it's full. It is full. But I'll tell you that the teachers who have, the ones I've talked to at least, the ones who have all their kids back, they're very happy about that because they don't have to do the extra planning for the remote students. The ones who have remote students certainly love their remote students and they'll continue to work for them. But when they're all back, it simplifies the teaching process significantly. So I think they're willing to say, yeah, it's full, but I got them all back.
And what type of protections are we using in the classroom? I know that we have hand sanitizer available for students, but are we also using screens on desk and things? Or
yeah, at the student level, at the elementary level, we purchased over 2,500 student shields. And so every classroom teacher had access to a full classroom of student shields for that. Of course, they do have the hand sanitizer. There's constant hand washing going on. The most important mitigation strategy where we hear from the state DPH is wearing masks when you're within 6 feet of folks. We just require masks in our classrooms all the time because they're moving around all the time. So that mitigation strategy at all levels is the most important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more question, Madam Chair. How about the lunch period? Do we have enough personnel now to move in space in the lunchroom?
So yes, it's not all going to happen in the lunchroom. So at the middle schools, they have outside spaces with picnic tables. They're going to take advantage of those picnic tables outside. And they're also going to use some classroom spaces on a rotating basis, I understand, for any of the overflow. And on a rainy day or, bad weather day, the students would be in those classrooms as well. So middle school principals have been soliciting for parent volunteers to go in and support those classrooms. And they tell me they're able to handle all this. Yeah.
Is that it? Anyone with a question? No? Okay, moving on to policy. Mr. Gallo.
Thank you,
Dr. Iwaniki.
So we met with policy committee, as many of you heard in public comment tonight, on March 11th at 5:30. 2 policies were reviewed there at the meeting extensively. Policy 9140 to rescind policy 9140, which would be the teacher board representative. And tonight we will have a first reading on that, where Dr. Iwaniki will give some explanations and some feedback a little bit about some of the history of why this policy has been spoken about, the possible rescinding of it. And then there's another policy that we will speak about tonight as well, and Dr. Iwaniki will talk about that one. This is to approve policy 6172.6. This one concerns virtual courses of study. This is also a first reading tonight. There will be time after Dr. Iwaniki's presentation for discussion. We will handle these 2 policies separately tonight. She will give a presentation on the first policy, and then there will be time for the board to ask questions and discuss. And then we also will have a few weeks to think about this and listen to more public feedback. And then this will come back to the board again at our next board meeting. And then we will do the same with the second policy after that. So we'll take them as 2 separate policies. And with that, Dr. Iwaniki, you have the floor.
Thank you. So Michelle's going to bring up another slideshow, which next time I can make sure that I have copies for you so you don't have to turn around. But I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that this is the first reading, as Mr. Gallo shared. Teacher representation on the board and virtual courses of study were the 2 policies that we reviewed together. The first policy, policy 9140, for everyone to understand, says that it shall be the policy of the Trumbull Board of Education to encourage participation of a teacher representative on the Board of Education. And the purpose of this participation is twofold: to provide teachers with an opportunity to express their attitudes, opinions, and ideas concerning the operation of the schools, and to provide the Board of Education with the opportunity to listen to teacher opinion on matters which affect teachers. The current status of policy 9140 is that the Board of Education has requested a review of the policy in relationship to best practices for school districts. TEA leadership has expressed a desire to keep the position. What prompted the board to request a review of policy 9140? There were meetings that happened prior to my starting in Trumbull that prompted the board to request a review by CAPE. Comments such as continued demands placed on teachers have continually increased in reference to a request for business teachers from 6 to 5. Frustration by the ability of the district administration to find those responsible. People that were angered by the unsafe environments in our classes caused by Google bombing. These were some of the quotes that were mentioned during that meeting, I'm told. In addition to that, there were some proposed statements that were brought forth to be presented, such as at the January 12th meeting that referenced things such as the administration, teacher leaders, and department chairs being silenced and marginalized, or coercive actions of leadership, and those that were busy asserting their management rights as opposed to being supportive. And those things caused the board concern and wonder about this policy and whether or not this was the proper forum to express those types of concerns publicly. So I was asked to reach out to CAPE, which is the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, They represent nearly every school district across the state of Connecticut. And their role is to support boards to establish and maintain policy, a board's foremost responsibility, and it's the primary mission of CABE's policy services. And I spoke with their senior staff consultant, Vincent Starro. Their feedback on policy 9140 is briefly bulleted here. They feel that it potentially interferes with grievance process, that it bypasses the chain of command or communication, that it goes sort of past principals and superintendents straight to the board without maybe communicating internally, that a teacher contract should have a role for communication with the board in place, and they asked me to look at that, which I'll show you this evening. And they said that the district should have ongoing teacher voice incorporated into systems and structures, which we'll also look at this evening. And they also highlighted that currently CABE could find no teacher representatives on any boards of education in the state of Connecticut, nor nationally. They could only find one nationally. So in a review of the teacher's contract, it says that section 19, the consultation procedure, that it's the desire of the board and the association to achieve continuous rapport and understanding between the parties. And it's felt that one method of achieving this goal is to discuss periodically various subject matters of concern, not necessarily mutual concern, rather, that are not necessarily covered under the teacher's contract. And accordingly, the parties will attempt to hold periodic informal meetings to discuss such subjects. So in other words, whenever the union would like to contact the board, if there's a mutual topic of concern, they may do that according to our teacher's contract. They also asked me to look at, are there inclusive structures for teacher voice in the district? Historically, Trumbull Public Schools has had committees and collaborative meetings at grade level, school, and district levels, such as the communities of practice and other teaming types of district level meetings. They have public comment at the Board of Education meetings. But we also wanted to note that the structures promoted by current central office leadership have aimed to also broaden teacher voice, such as union representation that meets regularly with the superintendent, town halls and leadership teams, focus groups, the thought exchange structure, and also school visits. I know I've seen Dr. Semmel in particular in schools. When we're visiting schools, we try to interact with educators and ask them for their thoughts and ask students even, how are things going, and really make sure that we're hearing teacher and student voice. So does CABE recommend revision was one of the questions we also asked them. Could we somehow edit this policy? Their response was to advise that districts are always welcome to edit policies. However, they also added that it's unlikely that editing the policy will fix the grievance or chain of communication issues, and cautioned that taking certain pieces out may lead to freedom of speech violations. They reiterated that other ongoing structures should be in place to include teacher voice, and CABE's overall recommendation was to rescind the policy. At the policy committee, it was recommended by 3 out of 3 votes that we rescind the policy. So with that, I will turn it over to the board for discussion and questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, who has a question for either Dr. Iwaniki or Tim Gallo or Marie or Allison, who are on the policy committee? Oh, I'm sure someone has a question.
Listen, it's Scott. I guess I'll go first. I don't necessarily have a question. I think I understand everything that you guys reviewed and the rationale that you put forth for this, but I do just want to voice my my disappointment in that recommendation. And I would have, during the policy committee meeting, I would have liked to see more discussion of potential alternatives and not taking CABE's recommendation, at face value, because there are a lot of things that we've done differently in Trumbull, and I think I agree with some of the speakers that we can be proud of some of the unique things that we do. The last thing I just want to say is that I remember a time on this board when, not as a member, but as a parent, audience member, when the reps, both teacher and student reps, were often recognized by the chair or or through the chair were asked questions by other board members and there was an active dialogue. And I personally would love to see a return to that. I would, as a board member, I would rely on that input from our representatives. Let's be clear, non-voting representatives, right? So it's an opportunity for us to hear from them. And I would recommend that this go back to committee for thinking about doing a revision of some type to address the concerns. Thank you.
Let me explain one thing. I know what you put up there behind me. I wish I had it in my hand so I could read it verbatim. But the reasons that you stated that you think that they had to relook at this, if you can find that slide where she said it, Michelle, and I could look at it, that would remind me.
Michelle, if you present it, I can go back to that slide. Yep.
Oh, yeah, turn this, because I have to turn around, so put it up there so I can see it.
Oh, no, it doesn't work, I'm sorry. There you go.
No. There, right here. Okay, now, this is what I'm thinking, all right? Okay, it says curriculum demands placed on teachers have continually increased. Now, and then requests for business teachers from 6 to 5. That right there, okay? Now that means for business teachers to teach, instead of 6 classes, to teach 5. Am I correct, Mr. Gallo?
I believe that is.
All right, that is not an issue for this. That's a negotiation issue with the teachers, the TEA, and the Board of Education when they go to negotiation. Okay, that, and I remember, was an issue back when, am I correct, Mr. Ward?
It was brought up several times.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think that is one of the issues that I see. And people are gonna they need clarity on what these mean. Because if I'm someone who's not in education, I don't know what that means. Request for business teachers from 6 to 5. What does that mean, 6 o'clock to 5 o'clock? You have to explain what that means. See, that is something that's negotiated through a contract. Okay, and I think what they mean is, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you bring it here before you bring it to the superintendent, okay, that could possibly become an issue. Am I correct on that?
That's correct. That is, these are examples of things that when they came up, that I'm told that the board was like, why is this being brought up in that form? Because it should have gone through negotiations, or it could be something that's grievable.
Or it should have gone through a process, like you have to talk to your, if this is a high school issue, then you have to talk to your assistant principal in charge of that area first. Then it goes to the principal. Then the principal would come to you because you're the assistant super. Then it would go to the superintendent. And that's the chain of command that I would see. And I can be wrong because I've been out of school now for how many years? I don't know if that's changed. Am I wrong, Dr. Semmel?
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. And I think Mr. Ward just said that the 6 to 5 was brought up in negotiations. Is that correct?
Yes, it was, but they got something else instead of 6 to 5.
And I think that's the point too, is that this was discussed in negotiations. The teachers ended up agreeing on a contract, that the Board of Ed agreed on a contract. And then that particular topic was brought up again, which caused you guys to say, wait a minute, we resolved this issue. It was discussed. A contract was agreed to. Why is this now something that's being put back in our, bring it up again at the next negotiation, I think is what you were wondering about.
And the second thing I was wondering about, business teachers, physical education teachers, we used to call them industrial arts teachers, the technology people, family consumer science, art, music, all teach 6. That was not up there. So those people were left out of that equation. Am I correct on that or no?
Yes.
Yeah. I believe when they mentioned this topic, they specifically mentioned, I believe if I go back to what they said, it was business teachers specifically.
Well, it affects more than just business teachers is my point.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
I don't know who was representing the rest of those people.
So it wasn't representative of
the group. So I think that Dr. Iwaniki is an example of when that comes forward, it shouldn't come right to us. It needs to go to the office administration first so that they can decide how this is affecting all the teachers that it affects. So I think that's one of the concerns that I think the board had. And if I'm wrong, but this was back when, so I want to make sure that I'm on the right track here. Was I correct?
Yes, you're correct, Lucinda.
Get near that.
So I'm gonna, okay. So I think just to clarify, and actually the people who are on our policy committee were educators also in surrounding towns. So let me just clarify, as of most of us being educators on this board, present or retired, we are super open to teacher voice. What I think why we voted no was what we're saying based on, and even I was surprised. I knew the number would have been low because in the district I taught in, the district my husband taught in, my sister's an educator. I can name 10 very close friends, college friends. I've kept them, none of them, when I did a quick survey and said, did you have a teacher? And I attended many meetings being a union rep. Did you have a teacher, like a teacher policy? No. What we were talking about is rescinding a written policy regarding having the teacher rep. But every Board of Ed has a right to have a teacher rep, and being educators, I think I assume we're going to continue having a teacher rep, a student rep, and a student voice. We may not call it a representative, we can call it whatever. But the chair, according to our Board of Ed policy, sets the agenda. And maybe like a 19 tonight, when we had this big TPAUD presentation, she or he may decide whether it's now or in the future. We may not have the student or the teacher make a report due to time constraints. But, and we're not, what we were saying is following Kate, it reinforced what we said. We don't need a written policy regarding having that teacher rep. It doesn't have to be changed. We don't need the policy. There's 169 towns and cities. When you're talking 168, do not have that written policy. It tells you something. So for whatever reasons, for conflict of grievances, I gotta be honest. When I came from a district where we did win. To me, all teachers are equal, whether I'm sitting in a PE class or I'm sitting in, we used to call them shop classes, or I was a math teacher. We should all be teaching 5, all with a non-instructional, all with a duty. The first thing I asked Mike and the negotiation team was, when it came back to us only a few weeks later, why didn't you guys look at this? Of course, it's a money factor, but I would think that would be a high priority. Obviously, he was on the team. He said it was a choice made by both sides, obviously mutually agreed. Didn't even go to grievance. So again, what I want the public, I'm a taxpayer also, to understand, we are not taking away a teacher voice. What we're saying is we're taking away the written policy, which no other town in the state has. So I want to be clear about that. Also, there was a comment made tonight that former policy members voted. I've been on the policy for 3 different terms with 3, Jackie was the chair.
Yes, I was.
With 3 different sets of public and parent and administrators and teachers. Pat Felici was the administrator rep the first time I was on. Never, and I'm assuming it's somewhere in our bylaws, never has one of the other members, except for the board members, in the 6 years almost I've been on, had a vote.
Thank you, Marie. More thoughts from the rest of the board? Allison, I know you had some thoughts on this.
I have a couple of thoughts on that. This is something that I'm new to the board, and since I've been on the board, I've seen my colleagues here struggle with. I think that there, is a little bit of confusion, but it's my understanding that teachers can speak at public comment, that they can sign up. You don't need to be a town resident to do that, correct?
Correct.
Employees can speak, employees and town
Employees
residents.
or town residents.
Okay, so we are allowing for that method of communication. I also had some concerns, Dr. Semmel, if you don't mind if I ask you, how does it impact how you handle a situation when you learn about it at the same time we learn about it?
Yeah, I think I shouldn't be surprised by different topics that come up, and I don't think that creates a good working relationship when I'm finding out about certain things at a public meeting when I'm certainly available all day to have conversations, or at night to have these conversations. So certainly wanting to know about these things. Our principals want to know about these things prior to, they want to solve these problems before they get brought up in a public way.
I understand that. And do you think that it helps you if you know about an issue ahead of time to have an ongoing discussion about it?
Of course.
And perhaps resolve the issue before it reaches the board level?
Yep, sure.
Okay. And if that's all occurring in a public meeting on a Tuesday night at 9/11, is that something that you're really comfortable engaging in at that point in time?
No, I don't think that we should be trying to solve problems in a public forum. We can handle them, you know, in our offices and having the conversations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like I'm on the stand now. Was I supposed to swear in?
Dr. Semmel is in charge of day-to-day operations. We are not in charge of day-to-day operations.
Right.
So things that occur during the day that may be questionable should come to his office at some point from a principal. So I'm hoping that it does go the chain of command. If it happens in a school, it goes to an assistant principal or a principal, and then it comes to either Dr. Iwaniki or it goes directly to the superintendent. But they should know those issues. Those issues should not be first heard at a board meeting. I think that's what the questions were with everybody sitting here on the board, is are these things that came up, did you know them? And I think that's what that list is. Am I correct, Dr. Iwaniki, that list that was up there?
Yes, that's a list of things that were brought up as concerns when they were heard publicly in that meeting, which I believe was in December before I started here. So when it was alarming because there was either no administrative response or no response by administration or things that people felt unsafe, I think was one of the quotes.
Okay, what you just said, there was no administrative response. Was the administrator told? That's the question. You don't have to, I don't want an answer. I'm just saying, was that person notified? See, it shouldn't come right here first. That person has the right to hear if something happened in their building.
Yeah, from our perspective, I know Allison has other questions.
Yes, she does.
But from our perspective, and I think in most effective organizations, all problems should be handled at the lowest level. For example, a parent who has a concern about their third grade teacher, they shouldn't come to the Board of Education and have their concerns told to the Board of Education about their third grade teacher if the third grade teacher didn't have a chance to resolve that issue with the parent. And anytime a parent does do that, we all know what the board's going to do. Go back and talk to the third grade teacher. And if you can't resolve it there, then you should get the principal involved. And so all of those types of things should be solved at the lowest level of the organization as possible. And the board level is actually the highest level of the organization. So I'll just leave it at that.
Can I just jump in right here? Madam Chair, if I remember correctly, when I first got on this committee, there was a large reminder of that chain of command when you started our meetings for this new board. And I remember you reminding parents what that chain of command really should be when you're having a difficulty with a teacher. It goes to the teacher, and then it goes to the assistant principal if there's one in the building, and then to the principal, and then from that point on, possibly to the assistant superintendent, all the way up to the superintendent. And really, the board doesn't look at grievance type things until they're really at the third stage of the grievance level. there's also a number of stages before they even get to the first stage of a grievance level. So really, it should have really gone through about 5 different levels before it would ever get to the board. Because of that reason, we have seen very few of those at the board level, because those things have been handled even by previous superintendents before you came on, Dr. Summer. So in my short term here on the board, I haven't really seen anything at the 3rd level of the grievance level. So that just goes to show that everybody's doing their job and these things are getting handled in one way or another. Sometimes not to the liking of the person who is at making the grievance or making the complaint, but handled nonetheless. So that was just a point. And with that, I'm sorry, Allison, we kind of derailed your last 2 points. So can we get it back to you, please?
All right, Allison has a question. When she's finished, Jackie had her hand up.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm assuming, because I wasn't on the board at this point in time, but there have been instances where you have been surprised.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the other question that I had is, in my research, it appears as though CABE is the industry standard. And if I've learned nothing else from my short tenure here on the board, is that problems arise when you fail to adhere to the industry standards. So for me personally, and looking at it, joining the board at a point in time where the operational review had just been released and we were under a tremendous amount of scrutiny and still are in our compliance issues. It's important to follow industry standards. So for me personally, I have a hard time ignoring a recommendation from CABE.
Jackie?
Yeah, just as the past chair of the policy committee, I think with a policy committee, it's very important that maybe every other meeting you go over the charge of what the committee's work is and what is the board members on that committee's job. The time I was on, there was the only people, and we voted, the 3 of us, but we really listened to the other people. And I too take CABE as the thing. I want to have teacher voice. Maybe when you go back and have the committee look at this, maybe we should think of rescinding this policy. And if not having a policy, looking at a new way of having a teacher voice. Maybe it's time for 2 teachers' voice. And maybe it's time that it's a teacher, that people apply for the position, like people apply to come and be on the policy committee. You read the applications, and that it's not a union position, but a teacher position. And I know Scott and I have talked a little bit about that. We want teacher voice, but perhaps the policy has to go away so we're not treading on negotiations and grievances, because there is a process for them. I think we need a process for true teacher voice. I always felt that we all need all of us in the triangle. We need the parents, we need the teachers, and we need administration. So, I just wanted to say that I think, Tim, maybe that would be good if you came up with like little missions so that the people serving as your advisory committee understand the goal. And, in our handbook, when we came on and learned or ran, there's good words there. So.
Thank you for that, Jackie. And I do feel that, the position most recently has taken a bit of a turn. We all know that this is a position that we've had for many years here in Trumbull. But most recently, it has changed, and to the notice of the board, to the point where it was reviewed, and then we have these recommendations. So this is where we're left. And again, we're discussing it at length this evening and giving everybody an opportunity to really speak about it. And again, there probably will be some more conversation through public comment and through emails and different things, even before our next meeting. So the process is that we would look at this again at the next meeting, and there's time for revision here. There certainly is after all of this conversation.
Revision is one way to go at it, and totally new policy is also a way. We have
Correct.
a whole
This is
past.
food for thought. This is food for thought for everyone here. I believe there isn't one person on this board that does not want teacher voice. Everyone does. We have to think about how we want it, and that's what you should all be doing right now.
And again, as chair of this committee, I am a teacher in the trenches every day. I teach 5th grade and have been teaching for 30 years. So certainly, I think it's very, very important that we have teacher voice in the town of Trumbull. But again, I think it's appropriate where it should lie and what types of things are being expressed at the board meeting without blindsiding or skipping chains of command or those types of things that were our concerns.
And I think it's important to know too, our first selectman used to be on the policy committee years ago. I remember Vicki Tesoro was on policy, so she's familiar with this. And she had a letter come in, and I saw it very, very late. I don't think Jackie saw it.
No, I read it and I sent it also on because I did read it. I remember when Vicki was on.
So it must have been later than we thought. But
Yeah, it was
I thought,
6:15.
and Mrs. Tesoro, we think might be on tonight. I don't know if she would like to say anything.
I'm going to raise my hand, you see?
I didn't see your hand. I only saw your head.
You have to literally raise your hand and wave, Vicki.
There you go. Now I see your hand.
Just so I don't confuse everybody that might be watching, as first selectman, I'm actually ex officio of all boards and commissions in town. So I don't want to think that I'm just putting my hand up here to speak for the heck of it. So yes, I was many years ago when my kids were in the Trumbull Public Schools on the policy committee for years. It was run a little bit differently back then. We were not CABE driven at that point. So we spent many hours in deliberating policies with teachers, parents, and administrators. And actually our policies were really the envy of many districts because they were so well done. And this policy, as you may all know, was first passed in 1987. So it's actually 34 years old. And so as far as I know, this is the first time there's been an issue with the policy itself. So I unfortunately lost power right in the middle of your discussion here. So if you could just let me know what's the process going forward now? I know this is the first reading. Usually back in the day when I was on the committee, and I think it still is, after the first reading, the policy gets returned to the policy committee for further discussion. Is that the policy? Is that what's going to happen with this policy?
Well, I will tell you that the people sitting here, from what I've heard from Scott and Marie and myself and Tim, I'm assuming Mike is in agreement with having teacher voice, that yes, would be a discussion that the policy committee would have to have. And how this is going to manifest itself and metamorphosize into something different, I don't know that right now. And so that would have to be going back to the policy committee. Allison, are you in agreement with that? Yes. Yes, and she's in agreement. So there isn't one person up here that's not in agreement with teacher voice. So I would think that it would go back to committee, and you would have to think about this. And I would ask all the board members that are sitting here, you gave us some examples, that if you have any of those, that you would come back and give Tim some suggestions. And I would ask Dr. Semmel if he would speak to the administrators about this. And we know what the teachers want, we understand that. And how do the administrators see this? What kind of input do they have? We've heard some parental input from our public comment, so we know more or less what people want. And maybe it's changed a little bit, but people have changed, over the years too. And some expectations are very different than what they used to be. So I guess you have to think about that as a policy committee when you go back, Tim,
Madam Chair, just a quick comment. The new administration, Dr. Sybil and his team, it's a different viewpoint now. We always want to have the voice of Peter's heard. He's already started town hall meetings, which we didn't have before his arriving here in Trumbull. He's out there working and meeting with teachers, getting their voices heard. So it's time to look at an alternate way of the same thing we've been doing for the last 34 years but not so much a policy on it. But the fact is that we're gonna set up alternate ways to increase our knowledge of the teaching staff.
And I would add to that, Mike, that, you know, most recently, the types of things that were evidenced tonight, and there is more examples of possible problems with some of the things that were proposed that were going to be said here at the board meeting. You know, I would encourage that we have an opportunity here with the new superintendent that we all worked very, very hard to put in place, who has an incredible open door policy. And some of the things that were mentioned tonight that brought concerns to the board, I really see as driving a wedge between that relationship, between the superintendent and between the teachers, and not really a positive type of message being sent. And, you know, as we move forward, we're looking for positivity in our town. We're looking to solve problems. And with these types of things being mentioned in this environment without going through the proper process, to me, in my opinion, it has driven more of a wedge between the two parties that were really needing to discuss it. So just my thoughts on that a little bit. And that's kind of where I am on it right now. And certainly as a teacher myself, I very much believe in teacher voice. But again, the proper place for the proper voice is kind of my opinion.
All right, Dr. Iwaniki, I think you've heard from most of us about what.
Lucinda, excuse me if I could, I didn't finish my comments. I sort of,
okay.
I'm sorry. So just let me clarify a couple of things that I might have heard earlier. And I was on another meeting, 2 meetings at the same time. So I just want to clarify something. In the present policy committee, are only the Board of Ed members voters on that committee?
As far as I know, Vicki, ever since I've been on the board, and that's 6 years, it's always been that.
That's again very different from what the policy committee used to be. Anybody that was actually a member on that policy committee, including the parents, the teachers, and the administrators, excuse me, were all voting members. But if you know, I can't change
Vicki,
the way it's been
Vicki,
changed.
it hasn't been that way for at least the last 12 years. I was chair, and I mean, I was just told.
It could be, Jackie. I don't, you know.
No, I mean, I was just told as chair what the procedure was, and that's
Right.
how it is on the other committees.
Right. It was different back then, but you know, I'm
Yeah.
not commenting, just making a comment. So, and also I understand and watch the presentation that, you know, Cabe said that, you know, Trumbull is the only district, maybe the only district in Connecticut that has this type of teacher representation on it. And I mean, that might be true. I think not every district is CABE represented, so I'm not sure that's absolutely true. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing that we're the only district. It may actually be a good thing. It may be a positive thing that we're the only district. That's, you know, and we have been, I guess, for 34 years, the only district that's had this representation. So I guess I'm, you know, finally just to say that I would like to see this, and I'm happy to see that it's going to go back to the policy committee for further discussion. And I hope that all parties who want to speak at that meeting are allowed to do so, and that the policy is reviewed. And I would hope, it would be my hope, and I'm only speaking as for myself here, is that this policy be reviewed, possibly amended, but not rescinded. I just don't think that you should be throwing, it's an old expression, the baby out with the bathwater. This is a good policy, and I don't think it should be rescinded, but that's my opinion. Thanks.
I just wanted to clarify, Vicki, that everyone did get a chance to speak at the policy meeting that we just had. We started it with a 3-minute, you know, time limit for everyone to be able to speak. And then once we were finished with everyone having an opportunity who wanted to speak, then I then opened it up again. Okay, was there anyone else who had anything else to say before we moved forward with the motion?
I understand that, Tim. I think that's great, but that's why you have, you know, 2 readings of a policy, so it can go back to the policy committee to be reviewed again.
Something that was mentioned earlier too in public comment. So I just wanted to make it clear that there was an opportunity for everyone in that meeting to speak at length, in fact.
If they wanted.
If they wanted, and some people decided not to speak also, so.
All right, Maureen.
So, Vicki, I've lived in Trumbull since 1977,
let's be honest, let's be honest, Trumbull is a different Trumbull, but as an educator, and two of the members on our policy committee work in the same town that I taught for 40 years. And the first thing I said to him was, could those teachers have gone back to their boards of ed and made some of the comments that we've seen recently from our teacher rep? And he said, never. Okay, the honest truth is we're all open to having a teacher voice. But I think the way the policy is written, and this is why Kate said that Trumbull was different 31 years ago. I have to be honest, I was very surprised to see we had that policy on the books. Because no other town would a teacher be able to adhere to that. So what we're saying is, and as educators, we are open to a teacher voice. But I think, like I said, the written policy could get us in trouble the way it was going. And we don't want that. And in all honesty, as a former teacher, and having taught in Bridgeport for 32 years, never ever would I make certain comments. I'd be teaching in the basement with 50 students the next day, based on some of my former superintendents, I have to be honest. But I think, as Tim said, we are present educators, we're former educators. We are open. We don't want any parent to think we're not open to a teacher voice. It is the written policy. So, but like I said, we'll discuss it again. Okay, I'm glad it's going back to policy. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one, the virtual. You want to do that, Dr. Iwaniki?
Yes, thank you very much. So the next policy, which the board members have a packet, which reflects the proposed changes. And you'll notice that the additions are highlighted and the deletions are struck through. And basically that policy is the policy 6192.6, which is the, I'm sorry, it should say 6172.6, which is the virtual courses of study. And this says that the boards of education through virtual courses of study as an alternate means of instruction for some students in special circumstances. And a virtual school is defined as an educational organization that offers courses at various grade levels through the internet or web-based methods. Such schools can offer courses to enhance, supplement, or enrich the existing curriculum and can also provide an effective alternate means of instruction. Virtual courses of study can be a part of the district's educational program delivery system to increase accessibility and flexibility in the delivery of instruction. So you'll notice that accessibility and flexibility written into your policy years ago, which are also two words that we hear a lot right now in our Connecticut flexibilities model. So this has been brought forth because the current language may limit students from taking courses needed to graduate or to advance to the next level in their education. Right now we have many students who may need to earn courses as a result of being absent for COVID. And we don't have a summer school program currently that's offered to support the breadth of offerings that might be needed for student credit recovery. Students at the middle school program may also benefit from use of this program, and the way that our policy is written, students in K through 8 cannot participate in the virtual instruction. So our language concerns specifically were that students could only take the virtual course if it was not offered at Trumbull Public Schools. But we have some students who may have, for example, not passed English and need an English credit to graduate. So by offering an online program where they can take that English credit, they would be able to do that. That would only happen if they were given permission with their house principal, and if it was determined that they failed the course due to the pandemic. So the other concern was that in grades K through 8, there are some students who could also benefit from participating in virtual courses as a part of their instructional program. So the proposed language changes, we're adding in that if a student has failed to earn course credit, or if they are behind in their learning due to a result of a World Health Organization, WHO, declared pandemic. Thank you very much to our board member, Allison, for suggesting that language. That would be, then the student would be able to participate in this type of coursework. They would also need, again, as in the past, permission from the principal and consultation with the house principal as well to make sure that the student qualifies.
Can I ask you a question, Dr.
Of course.
Rogers? All right, E.
Yeah.
The course is not offered at Trumbull High School. What course? The course that they missed?
So in the previous policy, yes, the course that they've missed, but also in the previous way the policy was written, you could take a virtual course of study if it was not offered currently. So if there's something that they wanted to take, like, I don't know, let's say there was a coding for a specific computer type of course that we did not have that course on curriculum. This line was there, but before it was just higher up, and we changed it to letter E instead of letter.
So you're talking both remediation and enhancement or enrichment. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. But you had the enrichment in there before. It was just at a different letter. It was a little bit higher up.
Okay. And sometimes, I don't know if this still happens, and you can clarify it for me. Do they still go to Sacred Heart or Fairfield Youth for courses if they don't have them?
I believe they can take courses in other places, but not to the extent that we would need for the amount of kids that we will have more students who are falling behind, and we'd like to have the ability to offer them something consistent.
Okay. Well, I can understand that for the remediation piece, but I'm talking about the enrichment.
Oh, yes, that is true.
If we did offer that super high level math, would they have the opportunity to go to Sacred Heart or Fairfield Youth?
I believe that's still true.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
And to clarify, Dr. Iwanki, this is obviously one of those policies that we've had to look at in light of COVID, giving students opportunities to make up missed courses, and just making it a little bit more flexible in this environment where we have so many more students who may need to access this type of situation.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, and I think that the urge I heard from our high school teachers and department heads was also to make sure that we had a consistent platform that we could help students to be able to have this other option.
Dr. Semmel, is this the same as what you were saying, recovery courses that you're getting the money from the federal government?
We might be able to use some of the money on this, perhaps the platform that she's referring to, like there's platforms like Ingenuity and Virtual High School that is going to cost the district more money. And then you need to buy seats for our students to do that, which is going to cost the district more money. So yeah, it is connected that way. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So it would make sense for the money to be used for something like that.
For sure. We want to make sure that our high school students are progressing along their 4-year graduation rate as expected.
And not be used to fund a gap that we might have in our budget.
And not be used just to supplant money that should be there from the town.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, does anyone have a question of Dr. Iwanki?
Just a note, possibly with the discussion going back to the committee, I'm more in favor of guidelines for teacher representative than a policy.
We're on the other one now, Mike. We're
I
back.
know, I did, but I'd really discussion.
We're back on the other one.
I know that just before she has any questions for her.
Okay.
And I like the word guidelines and not a policy.
Write that down.
Thank you.
Guidelines.
Guidelines.
All right, anybody with a question on this, the virtual policy for Dr. Iwanki as this first read? Because we'll get
No,
another.
I just want to say, I think you did a really good job on this because you left the policy. You did not have to change anything in the policy. You were able to follow the policy and make changes in the requirements. So really nice job.
Thank you.
And just, I also would like to thank you, Dr. Iwanki, for all your hard investigative work on both of these policies, and a little bit of baptism by fire, I have to say. But you did a great job in presenting it very fairly and very transparently. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to the financial reports. Mr. Hendrickson, how are you?
What you've been waiting for all night. Financial reports.
Okay, thank you.
Given the lateness of the hour, I will concentrate primarily on three budget items, that being the operating budget, the special revenue funds, and also the food service. The scholarship, student activities, and town accounts have minimal balances and minimal changes month to month. If you look at your package, let's see. Okay, we'll start on page 5. And going through specific accounts, most salary accounts are running close to 100% of budget, including expended and encumbered funds. As you may remember, the teacher's salary line code 120, there was approximately 2.4 million included in PPS curriculum writing. I discovered that this amount was for allocated salaries, as I have indicated in the past. The amount was allocated, but not to specific accounts. It appears that this amount was properly allocated, since only 198,000 out of a budget of over 52 million is currently available, or 0.38% of this line item budget. I would also like to point out that it is important to note that in the column labeled available/over on the far right has a positive figure. That does not necessarily mean that that number in the column is surplus. Money may still be spent from these funds before year end. So it would be premature to calculate a surplus just by adding that column. In looking at Paris and AIDS code 160 and substitutes code 170, they have a sizable available balance. This is partly due to the fact that much of this expense cannot be encumbered because employees turn in timesheets to get paid. The miscellaneous salary items code 195 includes a 1.4 million reserved for negotiations. As I've indicated in the past, I have not been able to locate any backup for this budgeted number. As you know, you approved $107,624,000 transfer from this account for other accounts at this last meeting. This transfer was approved and will appear in the March financials, which I will show at the April meeting. The benefits item of benefits is running about 98% of budget. The health benefits budget is about 316,000 available. However, this can change due to employee status change, that being a person changing their marital status from single to married or starting a family. The services property, the most the item that sticks out here is in energy. That is code 415. It has a $420,000 deficit. This is primarily due to the energy efficient lighting project at Trumbull High School and the Agri Science Center. However, associated with these projects are incentives totaling $217,000 and the possibility of a $250,000 interest-free loan. The business office has contacted United Illuminating to determine the next steps to obtaining these funds. Under purchase services, the transportation contract with Durham, as I've told you in the past, states that the district is only obligated to pay 50% of a day's contractual amount if the bus service is not required. So we had about equal savings in January and February between $78,000 and $77,000 in both months, and our savings to date through February 28th is $542,000, and when March comes in, I expect that to be over $600,000. And under other services, Ms. Wishimara had a question last meeting about the deficit in the account for athletic insurance. Athletic insurance was, of the bill was roughly $88,000. It was only budgeted for $65,000. The prior year's actual was $78,000, and the experience, I'm searching, the exposure that was in the previous year was around $76,000 to $78,000. I spoke with the insurance rep and she went through her records. So that amount is justified by the amount of activity that would require. And I want to conclude my remarks on the operating budget. Board of Education has spent 55.2% of its annual budget. That's reflected in the graph towards the end of the presentation. The prior 2 years, this figure was 62.5 and 56.1%. Based on the current spend rate, I estimate that the Board of Education will have at least $2 million in surplus at year end. This is in large part due to transportation credits, coronavirus relief funds, CRF, and lower health benefits and out-of-district special ed tuition. And I'd like to go over the special revenue funds, and that should be page 28 or 27, excuse me. The special revenue funds, at the bottom of the page, it shows a deficit of a little over $444,000. This is down $140,000 from last month's deficit. This is primarily due to an additional $29,000 in interdistrict revenue, that being the monthly tuition that comes in, an increase in an $81,000 increase in rebates, that being the E-rate money, and a $28,000 reduction in the voluntary insurance deficit, which is a self-liquidating account. The elementary strings and band has a $157,000 deficit, and roughly estimate about $10,000 in revenue remaining to be collected. So at year end, I estimate a deficit of $147,000. The preschool is just under $200,000 deficit year to date. However, there is additional revenue to be booked, about $126,000. So I estimate that the debt will be, or the deficit will be roughly $70,000 at year end. So if I take the sum of the estimated revenue and adjustments, it's about $244,000 against the current deficit of $444,000, which the adjusted deficit would be about $200,000. I must emphasize the recommendations number 54 and 55 of the operational review. Specifically, they deal with special revenue accounts and related deficits, budgeting and transfers. Although the special revenue funds may end up in a positive position at year end, that isn't enough. Each account should stand on its own, and we should adjust those operations either through fees, subsidizing the program from the operating budget, or do we modify the program? That's all I have to say on that. Superintendent Semmel touched on the lunch account. It was roughly $8,500 in deficit. As a comparison, in January, the loss was $20,000. In December, the loss was $96,000. The current deficit is $530,000. If the losses continue at the February rate, I estimate at year end, the deficit for this year will be between $560,000 and $570,000. But as you heard at the meeting the other night with Board of Finance, we are proposing to transfer $500,000 from the cash account of the lunch fund to pay down the current balance on due to others, which is due to the town. That would reduce that from roughly 2.4 million to 2.9 million. The proposed transfer was approved at the Finance Committee meeting. I would propose that we make a motion now to make that transfer, and we can affect that from the business office to the town.
Scott.
Hi, this is Scott. I would make a motion that we transfer $500,000 of the cash in the lunch program to the due to others account.
I'll second that.
Jackie, did you second?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Okay, any question about that from the other board members? No, okay, let's take the vote. Okay, Tim?
I'm in favor. I'm in favor.
Okay, Marie?
Yes, in favor.
Mike?
Yes, in favor.
Jackie?
I'm in favor.
Scott?
In favor.
Allison?
In favor.
Lucinda in favor. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and one last item, since it'll be, I think, 5 weeks until we meet again, I want to update you on briefly on our operational review, dealing with recommendations 15, 61, and 62. They all have to do with something called position control, which we will accomplish through an online training session, well, actually sessions with Munis on Thursday, April 1st and Thursday, April 8th in the afternoon. And also we will probably have an additional session sometime in June as a refresh. But this will be a training for most people in the business office as well as HR to put that in operational. Also, regarding operational review recommendation number 29, installation of Novatime, Deb Nakano, our payroll manager, and I have been attending weekly sessions with Novatime, normally 1 to 2 o'clock on Wednesdays. I believe tomorrow is either our 5th or 6th session. We're going through the programming of the system to make it operational by July 1st. Also, I want to emphasize to everybody that the monthly financials and the operational review status updates are on the Trumbull Public Schools website under the Board of Ed tab and then under budget. So that concludes my report, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Lucinda,
I just want to clarify something that we spoke about at our subcommittee finance meeting. I've already spoken to Scott and Jackie, but since we're here, I can let you know. On page 25, we had a question at our subcommittee meeting that the foreign language department, the work language department at Trumbull High School wanted to combine 2 accounts. And they told me when it was presented, it was language clubs. That's not the case. It is the honor society clubs. So that number is 20627 and 20619. Those are the 2 accounts that they want to combine, the honor society accounts. So I did tell Jackie and I did tell Scott. So we're okay with it. I want to make sure that everyone on the board is clear because that was discussed. Okay, is all right with everybody here? Okay,
yes.
I want to take the vote so everybody knows. You all understand that, right? It's the honor society induction. Okay.
Yeah.
Tim?
I'm in favor.
Marie? In favor. Mike?
Yes, in favor.
Jackie?
I'm in favor.
Scott?
Yes, in favor.
Allison? In favor. And Lucinda in favor. All right, thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Lucinda, we need to accept the financial reports as of February 28th, 2021.
She made the motion, second.
I'll second that, Scott.
Scott can second.
Got a second. Okay, all in favor? Tim?
I'm in favor.
Marie? In favor. Mike?
Yes, in favor.
Jackie?
I'm in favor.
Scott?
Yes, in favor.
In favor? Lucinda in favor. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Paul. We're moving on. Update, Scott and Mike.
Very good. Thank you very much. We will have us out by 10, I hope. I just wanted to give a quick report on last Thursday, March 18th, the facilities subcommittee met. And during the meeting, John Morello provided us status updates on 10 of the active projects that they're working on, and also gave us an update on his planning for summer projects, which could include gym floor refinishing. Some of the highlights from that update that I wanted to let you all know about are that John is working on getting the aisle lighting at Trumbull High School in the auditorium repaired. He's doing that with internal resources and existing budget, which is great news. That'll be important as we people begin to come back to the building and we start to use that space again. Also at the high school, John is working with the town to select an architect to build spotlight platforms in the back of the auditorium. That's a capital project that's on our plan, and the funding was approved for, and also separately working to select a design firm to work on the Trumbull High School Wellness Center, formerly known as the weight room. Another exciting project that has been in the works for a while is the completion of the dual door vestibule project at Madison Middle School. John's got a target completion date for that of the end of May. And the last exciting project that I wanted to mention tonight, certainly not actually the last exciting project, but they are completing the installation of mini split air conditioning units at DFS and Toshua, which when that is complete, we will have at least one classroom in every grade in every elementary school will have air conditioning, which ensures that we can be in compliance with any required health accommodations for our students. Are there any questions on any of that before I turn it over to Mike for an update on our Middlebrook roof committee?
No, okay, Mike.
You may want, Scott, maybe hard copy of that information that you talked about to the board members. When we meet again next time. It's nice that.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. That's an excellent point. I will make sure that it's in the minutes from our meeting, and then I'll forward it to everyone.
Thank you.
Middlebrook Building Committee meets tomorrow night and selecting three architects for interview. Biggest thing we're concerned right now, and I'm talking to the tenant, is the timeline, getting bids out, because we have to have it done. We've only got 6 or 7 weeks in the summertime. So I guess one of the questions we'll be asking tomorrow night, if you get this contract, can you guarantee you'll be in and out of Middlebrook School for the fall opening?
Well, you'll be asking those people that
We will
question.
be asking tomorrow night. That's it.
Yeah, because you know, Mike, gotta remember, you will have a new principal.
I realize.
I was going to joke earlier, Lucinda, that that Pat might be retiring at this point because she doesn't want to spend the summer smelling the tar on the roof.
Very possible.
She might have said, "I'm not going through another roof replacement."
Nobody has been what we've been through at the high school for 10 years in a renovation project. Trust me. You guys that was easy. It's like building an igloo. Okay, anybody with a question? Any other questions? And it's, yes, thank you, Scott. We are on time. It's almost 10.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second. Marie Petiti, second. Okay, all in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Thank you and good night. Thank you, everyone, and good night.